begin our committee meetings with the Finance Committee, I'm sorry, the Technology and Building Grounds Committee.
I want to welcome everyone to the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. First agenda item is baseball, softball renovations, and we have Ernie Graham here from ELA Sport. He's going to give us a presentation.
Very good. The date on the slide is kind of an accident, but that was actually the last time we were here. I just wasn't able to change it. It's just embedded within the graphic itself. But it's a good place to start this conversation tonight because we were here about 6 months ago to formally introduce this project to the committee. I've been working with Brian on various concepts for this since about 2018. It's been 5 years, but we're getting somewhere. So when we last left you can go ahead and jump to the next slide. So when we last left you in August, we discussed the project. Obviously, we had some preliminary costs and cost estimates that I had put together to kind of give you guys an expectation of what we thought things should cost. We had a good discussion back there in August, and along with your solar folks, we had a conversation about these projects, and maybe there was things that we should do to kind of help you guys make a decision on where to go with these projects. So we kind of proposed it as a due diligence phase, of which the core of that was getting topographic surveys done, because you would need those regardless of whether you went forward with one project, both projects, whatever. We didn't have the surveys. So that I misspelled survey badly up there, I see. But in any regard, so with getting that work done, that when you guys were able to come to a decision on how you wanted to move forward on one, both, three of these projects, we would at least not be a couple months behind the 8 ball trying to get this stuff done. So good news is, from back in August, you can see through the dates there, you guys, we were authorized to do the work starting at the beginning of October. We got the wetlands investigation and report done. That was completed just before Thanksgiving. The topographic survey was completed just prior to a couple weeks before Christmas. And then in the meantime, while that process was going on, Tyler, my engineer, who's here tonight, he was in contact with all the approval authorities that would be involved in the project, the Conservation District regarding the NPDES and water quality permitting, and of course municipalities in regard to the land use being both solar and the baseball and softball renovations. With getting the updated survey and some of the information back, we were able then to take that original scope that we had presented you guys in August for the baseball and softball renovations. We were able to send that to the contractor, Land Tech Group, who had done your stadium projects for us. They also do natural grass renovations. So they gave us what I would call a preliminary bid, because we haven't gone all the way through the construction design phase, and also haven't gone through the permitting stormwater design phase. But with that scope, they were able to give us, so it's called a preliminary bid proposal, but it's a much step higher than the estimate I did. Not that I can't estimate the work, but this is actually contractors saying, this is where the prices are, this is our commitment to do that scope of work for you. So here we are tonight, and depending on the board's flavor on this, we'll go over a schedule here in a little bit. You guys will have some discussions to see if this is a viable project for you guys. And if you guys determine that it is, our next step then is to give you a proposal and agreement to actually do that final design and engineering work, and hopefully move forward with construction starting this summer. So if you want to slide forward for me again. So as I said, this is just a quick graphic. It was a lot of area survey. It was close to 25 acres. This is the upper portion of the survey base map. You can see the portion where your baseball and softball fields are. Go to the next slide. And then this is the lower half of the survey, which is where the solar project would potentially go. I know the folks from the floor are here to have a conversation with you guys about that after I finish up. So they've been provided with all this information as well, so that they can continue with their due diligence investigation and give you guys some input on that. You want to slide to the next one? So just a couple quick things in regard to the wetland area. So the entire area within the survey, the total project area comprising both the baseball, softball, as well as potential solar project area, was included in the area study. This is just an excerpt from the report. I believe Greg has a full copy of the report if any of the board members are interested in reading through that. Next slide, please. And then in the report itself was, this is just an exhibit that I cropped out of the report this morning to show the areas that are crosshatched in there. Those are the areas of wetland impact. Tyler will go into that a little bit more when I have him come up and talk about schedule and permits and process. But in the lower area there that you can see there's a more gray shaded area, of course that's from a Google map, so the gray represents woodlands and those type of things. That is the extent of the wetland and regulated waterways within that area that would be potentially proposed for your solar project. Next one, please. So there again, we didn't change the scope at all from August. I think I went over pretty extensively when I was here in August, but just for the people that maybe weren't here in August and anybody else with any additional interest. We call it a renovation. The softball field is probably truly a renovation. It includes new fencing, warning track, infield regrading, new player shelters, dugouts, if you will, along the first and third base foul lines, new tension net backstop system, and a small building for being able to serve some snacks and store some equipment and that kind of thing. The baseball field, like I said, we term it a renovation, but it's really a reconstruction. I mean, it's staying where it is. The home plate may shift a little bit, but we're basically starting over with that field. We can't change grades a lot, but it is basically taking all the topsoil material off of there, re-laser grading the entire outfield, putting in a complete new underground drainage system, new complete fencing around the outfield, foul lines, complete new infield, player shelters, tension net backstop with a backstop wall, give it a real pro-style feel, and then also on baseball and softball, it includes bullpen areas and synthetic turf batting tunnels. So if you want to go to the next one, I think I just have a few slides. We'll jump through here real quick. Just kind of gives you like the vision of what it is. This would be like your baseball backstop area. You can see the shelters on the side, your nice padded backstop wall. Like I said, really a complete redo of what is there to really bring it to a high-quality sports facility construction standard. Next one, please. And there again, this is just kind of like an artist image of what it would look like down the first baseline. Next one. And then jumping over to softball, you can see the backstop very similar to baseball. Of course, softball backstop's a little bit smaller just based upon the size of the field. And you can see kind of like our concept for a structure in behind the backstop to take care of some of your spectator needs and as well as some of your storage needs. Next one. And that would be the shelter that would come off or the building that would come off the parking lot basically from your stadium going down to the baseball field. Next one. So in our process to develop these costs and also scope of work, we at least go to level of doing a preliminary layout plan so we can take some quantities, that kind of thing. So that's just basically what would be the start of our construction set for the layout of the facility. Next one. And then there again, just add a little bit of color to it so you can see like the proposed areas of improvement and what's involved in each one. Next one. So the real meat of why I'm here tonight, so we've gone through this costing exercise now 3 times, first time starting in for real like in June of 2022. We ended up changing the scope quite a bit after having some conversations with Brian about what your needs were. And really when you look at the bottom of this, what we're looking at was the cost, and that's almost too far away for me to read. But as far as the actual numbers go, I think, Brian, does the board have the summary sheet?
They do. Matt, is that correct? Everybody has that sheet?
I had to share, well, I had that up on the screen there. I don't believe it was in last week's update.
I guess I got to move a little bit closer to my eyes. So from where we were, like what we presented in August was that our projected actual construction cost was about $1.83 million. Total project cost about $1.958 million. And like I said, we moved it to the next step where we actually got real contractor input and a real commitment from a contractor to be able to build this project. His cost came in slightly higher at $1.9 million for actual construction, and a total project cost about just slightly over $2 million. So the real meat of this is, as you can see, that the cost escalation in the last 6 months on this was about 3.8%. We didn't make any scope changes, so it was the same scope of work that we had back in August. So we kind of look at our estimate as being accurate with the 3.8 fluctuation basically being the 6 months of inflation, especially carrying from 2022 to 2023 into a new calendar year. And like I said, the prices that we right now have from Land Tech as we go through this process, and if the board elects to go for it, their unit prices are locked in and based upon doing this project from the middle of summer through the fall period. Next one. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to interrupt. But then as far as schedule goes, we're still on the same track, and I think that's what we talked about in August, that we had some time to vet through some of these things so that you guys had more information to be able to make these decisions. So you can see our first two steps in this process are completed. That was the survey and doing the wetlands presence absence determination. The next step you can see up there at the top is if you guys elect to move forward with the project, would to contract with us to get the permits done, final construction drawings done, and then finally secure a contract with the contractor. The schedule still works out that if you jump down to the bottom of it, you would anticipate a mid-July start. And we're really at the point now where that is where we wanted to start regardless of how the permitting schedule works out, because we want to gauge things so that we're actually doing seeding and sodding in the fall when we have the appropriate weather to be doing that. I think you guys are well aware trying to grow grass in August is just not a good thing. So the schedule's set up to give us the best opportunity to be able to complete the project within the seasonal timeframes that give us the best opportunity for success. And next one, let's see what's on the next one. So as far as the project itself goes, before I turn it over to Tyler to get into kind of like the nuts and bolts, which will kind of help us transition into your next presentation tonight, talks a lot about the permitting, the schedule, and things that are in front of us. So like I said, if I was going to summarize anything about why I'm here tonight, is basically from where we were in August, we've gone through the steps to know that the numbers we gave you in August are good. They're within 3 to 4% of what we showed you in August, and we're prepared to move forward with the next steps. So Tyler, if you want to give a brief overview, and then that'll kind of help us transition into the next presentation these guys are hearing tonight.
Try not to get too far into the weeds here. Initially, when we were looking at this project, I already mentioned and thought there might be some potential or benefit of looking at the two projects as one from a permitting standpoint, given that they're on the same property and proposed at roughly the same time. DEP/Conservation District like to see one permit typically. Since then, we've had the wetland study done. We can see where the wetlands are and kind of have a more clear path as to how the permitting structure lays out. We did a second meeting with the Conservation District to discuss it. So basically, the stream that runs through there is a tributary of a wild trout reproducing stream. So whenever there's a wetland that's hydraulically connected to a wild trout stream, those wetlands are considered exceptional value. Any regulated waterway, as far as watercourse or wetlands that are either high quality or exceptional value, require an individual permit, which is a higher level MPDS permit. They run 6 to 9 months permitting time. There's a few other additional steps you need to take during the permitting process. So discussing it with the Conservation District, since all of the wetlands are located west of the stream, since the athletic fields are east of the stream, and the timing of the athletic fields is a little more sensitive as far as getting everything done to plan on time. They agreed to let it come in as 2 separate permits, so the athletic fields can be processed as a general permit, which is a 4.5 to 6.5 month process. They have an expedited review option. It's a higher permitting fee, but it shaves about 1.5 months off your timeline. So you're looking at 3 to 4.5 months, which is in line with the schedule that Ernie outlined. From a municipal standpoint, the solar field is in a different municipality than the school and the athletic fields. Athletic fields are in Slatington Borough, whereas solar arrays in Washington Township. From a municipal standpoint, they need to run separate. From a state or county standpoint, separate seems to make the most sense. And the county, Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, since Slatington does not have a comprehensive plan, all planning in the borough goes through the county, whereas Washington Township does have a comprehensive plan. They do their own planning. It's a rural municipality. Solar fields, energy development is not addressed in their ordinance. So there's not currently a zoning district that allows for solar. So as far as the actual process with them goes, it's not quite as clear cut. The first step is to take the plans to the township as a sketch plan, kind of introduce it to the planning commission, identify any development or zoning challenges. Because it's not a permitted use, it's not clearly allowed, but the municipality has to provide a district that does allow for it. So since they don't do that, they may interpret it as an accessory use to the school, which would mean there's no zoning required, maybe as simple as a land development or a stormwater management only plan. But the point there is you kind of have to get through the sketch plan process. They'll determine if zoning is required or if land development is required. And unfortunately, we won't know until we get there. So I think that pretty much outlines everything that's up there. It's kind of a complicated permitting process. If there's any questions, though, I'd be happy to.
Are you doing that in conjunction with McClure, or are you, who's presenting to Washington Township, I guess is my question.
I believe McClure.
Okay.
They're solar.
Great, thank you.
So, yeah, just to summarize, like, kind of what, so we have the cost figured out for the athletic portion of it. We've gone through this process. It sounds like before we were here in August, that it sounded like comprehensively doing both projects under one permit application kind of made the most sense. And there again, you could still elect to go that direction, just understanding that once you put the baseball, softball field with that, it's going to be a longer process to do it all as one process. So by separating, and it's fortunate the Conservation District was able to, I guess, kind of see the light and say, yeah, this makes sense. You have a simple project here and maybe a little bit more complex environmental project over here. It makes sense for you to split those across, and it certainly helps you guys out by getting the construction of your athletics on a different track. But you still could combine them into one permit.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Christian?
You say the wetland study was complete. What exactly was in that study in regards to those grayed out areas where the creek flows through?
They qualify as jurisdictional wetlands, or forested wetlands. That's essentially the meat of it. We have a secondary wetland analysis scheduled that's occurring tomorrow, actually, so that'll kind of get more into the actual hydrology of the wetlands and potential impacts and a little more detail, and that's required since they're exceptional value.
So you're proposing to relocate those wetlands? Is that what you're saying?
No, we're not.
You're gonna eliminate them?
No.
You can't touch
As
them?
far as I know.
Okay, so what you're saying is the solar project really can't go there?
Well,
Where the wetlands are.
we're certainly not saying that. What we're saying is the limit of the study and the investigation is identifying by the parameters of the DEP that they are there. So then, of course, there's another whole set of rules and guidelines that go along with development. So Tyler's right, is that, yeah, impacting the wetland is a different permit path altogether. But, and I'm sure these guys are going to discuss about it, is in the area that was remaining. I think when the solar project was first looked at, you looked at that entire area down over the hill and said, yeah, we got a lot of land here. This is going to be a piece of cake. It's facing the right direction, all this other kind of stuff. Getting in here and doing the actual identification, and that's what the one of the study is, looking at the plant materials, the vegetation, the hydrology, and then also being able to say, this is not just a wetland, it is also a wetland of this level of value. So we're not saying you can't develop in there, we're not saying you can develop in there, we're saying that it is a permitting process that will be far different than what we're doing for baseball and softball.
Does the study that starts tomorrow also then require looking at not only the topology of the wetlands, but also endangered species, plant animals, et cetera? Or is it a separate topic that needs to be addressed?
Not specifically. If they would come across specific endangered species, that would certainly come up in the report. Early on in the process, we did a PNDI search, which is
What does PNDI stand for?
the PA Natural Diversity Inventory. So basically, the state has like a GIS system where special species or endangered species, that type of environmentally sensitive species are present. So they'll have areas identified, for instance, bog turtles. Everybody's heard of bog turtles. I'm sure. So they've got areas that they know bog turtles are. They've got areas that they know have bog turtle habitat. In this region, you mostly run into rattlesnake habitat. So they've got all of this kind of logged in a database. You go in, outline your project. They do a screening to see if there's any overlap with the sensitive species habitats or known populations. In this case, there's not.
There's
in
no
those
overlap?
species. No, the candy eye came back clean. So really the sensitivity here is, as far as wildlife or species is concerned, it would be naturally reproducing trout, which are actually located downstream.
And so that's not to say, that's to say what's in Pennsylvania's database, what's been reported, what's regionally, what's locally, where there's been a hit somewhere else. If you move forward on development of that portion of the property, the level of investigation and criteria are going to continue to increase as you go through that process.
But that will be part of one of the next phases.
It would be. I mean, once you get into a permitting of this kind of level, then there's going to be other consultants and professionals that identify habitat and, evaluate not only the wetland, but the species and things as well.
And the school district pays for all those studies?
So if we can just, I'm going to go back to school board members and see if they have any questions, just like we did last time, and then we'll open it up to members of the audience. So do any other school board members currently have any questions that they would like to present first?
The expense of all these studies, I assume, is rolled into the total project. So even if we opt to not go forward with this, we're still on the hook financially for these studies, correct?
Well, right now, you guys did a contract with us to do the survey work and the wetland identification. Any permitting work is the next phase of the project. So, like I said, from the baseball and softball standpoint, our permitting level of effort and study is fairly de minimis in regard to the other side of the stream, let's put it that way. So any proposal I give you for going to baseball and softball fields will be full inclusive of any permits and studies that you need. Because I'm sure if you'd like to move forward with the solar project, the consultant will include any fees and permits that you guys may need as well.
So sequentially, what I'm hearing then, Ernie, is that it makes sense to make a decision, or for the board to give administration direction, probably this evening, about whether they would like to see us split the projects or not. Okay.
Right, and I think from where we were and what we've done, that was the big goal of this due diligence phase, which we went into this thinking it made a lot of sense to save money and just do these all as one project. And now in this regard, if we split them apart, it's actually way more advantageous than we originally anticipated.
And if we were to split them apart and address softball, baseball complex first, I'm hearing you say that expenses related to permitting are pretty much already
well, they would
addressed.
they would be included. They're in the budget I presented.
So this part has already been addressed, and then anything moving forward is part of the cost summary.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so any of those costs from the cost summary, and like I said, what we're doing tonight is the baseball, softball portion is pretty much ready to go. I don't want to speak for the other folks here tonight, but there's obviously questions on moving forward on the other portion.
Thank you.
Just one more quick one, George. So they're separate projects related, but not codependent on each other. So we can opt to go with one or the other, or neither, or both.
Absolutely.
Matt?
Yes.
I'd almost feel more comfortable having the clerk do their presentation before we ask a bunch of questions having to do with potentially the solar project. My personal perspective, I'd rather hear their presentation first before we start asking questions about it.
About the solar project.
Yeah, in the wetlands or whatever it's, the area where it's going to be.
I agree. I have one other question. Completely don't backtrack a little, going back to the baseball softball project. Would it be possible to go back to the slide where it shows the layout?
Sure. You just want to plan?
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. Yep, that's good. So, first of all, I love it, I think it's great. The only thing I have a question or possible concern is we have a concession stand on the softball side. But if we have a baseball game going on, there's nothing over there. Oh, is there?
It's off the
Yeah,
parking lot.
Oh, disregard.
All right.
Questions answered.
Wasn't easy. Ask all those kind of questions you want.
Disregard them. I'm blind, even wearing my glasses. No, questions answered. Looks good. I like it. Good job, Brian.
Are there other questions related to the baseball softball project this evening?
The only question I have, and I have copies of the cost survey and all that, but I don't have any of this stuff. And I guess the older I get, the harder it is for me to read pink and white on the board and stuff. Do you have copies of that available for
I
us?
did not bring hard copies.
We'll get, they brought a jump drive this evening. This is the first that we're seeing this, so I'll make sure everybody gets it.
Okay, yeah, it's the first time seeing it too, and it's kind of hard to make decisions based on seeing it for 5 minutes and, you know.
I apologize for that, but
No
yeah.
problem. I'm just
you guys
asking.
have- You guys have all the electronic files now, you can.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Questions now, okay, for baseball?
For baseball, softball?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yep.
There was discussion previously that we would be leasing this facility, or did I misunderstand that previously, the leasing
I'm not
was
familiar with that
on the
discussion.
solar side?
The solar only, just the solar.
So this is a complete buy,
We would own this.
we own this?
Yeah.
You would be considered the general contractor?
No, we're the designer and engineer.
So whatever company you had your preliminary bid there for, that would be one of the GCs that would be bidding the job?
Yes.
Land
With all
Tech.
their subs then?
Yeah, and because, I believe because it's co-stars, that it's already approved by the state for us to be able to move forward with it.
Just out of, how many bids do we need as a public organization to,
One,
just one bid?
because it's a co-stars project.
Really?
Yes.
For $2 million, we're only going with one contractor?
How can you do that?
The state allows it.
How can you
From a financial perspective, I mean, not,
put it out for bid, man?
so I do projects
That's
similarly. It's
It's a,
stunning to hear that we don't have a process in place, that we only need one contract.
we do, sir, we work through the co-stars process.
Okay. So we answered that question. Is that a fixed price project at the end of the day, how we do projects, or is that time and material and there's change requests, et cetera, happening? How is that going to work?
Well, like with the other projects we've done for the district, the contract's usually a unit price-based contract. So it is a lump sum against a unit price. So if there's any quantity changes go through, the unit price is fixed and the contract is like that.
Would you explain this in a little more detail maybe for the rest of the audience here?
So when you have a unit price, let's say you have 3,000 cubic yards of dirt that needs moved, the contractor bids on that quantity plus a unit price. So let's say that unit price is $18 a cubic yard. So regardless if you go through the process, whether it's more or less, then his contract can be adjusted. If he moves less dirt, that $18 per cubic yard is multiplied by the cubic yards he moved less, or cubic yards that he moved more. So it gives you a good control factor because everything is itemized. You're not getting a lump sum where all you see is a bottom line contractor doing this project for X. His bid is actually a list of, like on a project like this, it may be 175 items. If any of those items change as you go through the process, he has to guarantee that his prices remain the same for that actual unit of work.
So in other words, also, whatever we discover with wetlands and other maybe unknown surprises underneath, that price can go up for additional remediation or additional work that needs to be done?
The baseball and softball fields won't be affected by the wetlands in any way.
But you still don't know what's underneath, if you're moving dirt or whatever, it's fine.
Well, since these are renovation project, our maximum excavation is going to be less than 18 inches.
We don't do any projects not to exceed top dollar projects.
That's how it would be awarded in the
Not
board
to exceed
approval.
X amount, but if it's less, okay.
Once we see the contract, if the board is supportive of it, that's how it would be worded in the agenda item.
Yeah.
I think it's a question for Facebook.
Thank you. Actually, I think Mrs. Farber had one, and then we'll go back to Mrs. Snyder.
I just wanted to, the practice fields are intact as well, correct? I mean, it appears that way in the diagram. I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't take away at all from the soccer, and I know the youth football, that was a big thing that we talked about, making sure that stays intact for them as well, correct?
And that is correct, and Brian and I had a conversation, I think it was last week, about working up with a construction operations plan to try to make sure that we do not, because we're going to extend into the fall, when fall sports start,
Right.
is to come up with a construction operations plan to allow these fields to remain in use.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs.
I
Snyder?
was just wondering if there was lighting included in this whole project.
There's not.
Yes, sir.
That's expensive.
We'll go to the gentleman back here and then you, sir.
Can you explain to me what you said, the co-star, you go through co-stars or whatever? Is that like a group of people that are like really good recommendations or?
So it, really what it means is that they're all pre-approved, but I'll let Mrs. Molitores give a more in-depth kind of state approval process input on that.
So CoStars is a state-approved plan that people can, in other words, they go out and they say, we want bids for a baseball, softball field. Everybody submits their bids and they use the best bid and then they are CoStars approved by the state of Pennsylvania. So that's how we don't have to go through the bidding process because we use Pennsylvania's state bid overall that they do for bigger projects like these. You're welcome.
In terms of lighting?
I'm trying to take them as I see them, so we're going to go, and I'm sorry, I forget your name. I know you were here last time, but the gentleman right here.
He sort of asked the question I was going to ask.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Since lighting is not included, is that something that could be considered at least from a preparation? Therefore, if we decide to add lighting down the road, that infrastructure will be made available once you dig stuff up, put the stuff on the ground where you need it, if you want to connect that?
I will look to Ernie for that answer.
It certainly could. The infrastructure, we're already running conduit for cameras, electric, that kind of thing. So burying another 3-inch conduit, or a couple more 3-inch conduits to get it where it needs to be. I mean, lighting a baseball field is about $1 million kind of proposal these days. We can certainly put extra conduit in the ground when we have it open. It's obviously the board's decision on whether you want to plan for future lighting because that's a whole nother power source kind of question as well. We're talking about like 480 volt at that point.
But as far as roughing it in, that's a potential.
Yeah, I mean, we know where the lights go. I mean, we've done a lot of baseball fields. We know where they need to go. We can obviously get the conduit there. It just depends on whether you want to go to expense to plan for that in the future, knowing that your investment in lighting is a significant number. It's not a 4-pole system, it's a 6-pole system.
Thank you.
I gotta go.
Like, you put the bids on and stuff, what you're saying is it's only a certain group of people that the state recommends that they can put a bid in for. So you can't have any outside bids throughout the state of Pennsylvania that do probably just as good a work, but if they're not on that list that the state recommends, you can't get a bid from them? Is that correct?
If we're going to go the CoStar process, it's for all contractors are welcome to apply to be CoStar approved. So that's how the state handles it, and then once approved by the state, then school districts can, or I think even other public entities can go this route. So it's on the contractor to be approved by the state. They have to go through that application process.
But for this project, just to reiterate and understand that there's only one approved contractor available, or there's multiple available, but we're only required to utilize
one of them. Correct.
Right.
So is that going onto this bidding portal and multiple can bid on it?
No, we've reached out to ELA Sport and the companies that they work with because of our previous relationship with them.
So there could be a contractor within that CoStar program within Pennsylvania that may do the job for $1.5 million. We just wouldn't know it the way we're deciding to go down the road.
Yes, if the board would like us to go out, they would have to direct administration to do that. Mr. Derry, you're going to say?
I think Ernie has some input.
Okay. Ernie?
I do?
No.
I'm not sure. I thought maybe you had some more input on that.
No, as far as the procurement process, whether it's CoStar's, KPN, Qualis, like one of those kind of things. So yeah, you're right. There's a certain number of contractors that are on that project. This project, we also originally, so that July number was based upon numbers that I got from a company called Hummer Turf. So maybe you're familiar with Hummer Turf. So there is more than one. So if the board elects, you can still go through a cooperative purchasing process and be able to control the quality of work a little bit by, like, We don't want anybody in the world trying to laser grade or put a slick fit or a sand slick drainage system into a turf project. I mean, that's very specialty work and special equipment, but there are 2 other firms in Pennsylvania that I would recommend. We've already talked to Hummer Turf, we talked to Landtech about this. I got the numbers from Landtech, especially because of the relationship with the previous work done here, that the school district was very happy with, I'm very happy with. So there is the opportunity to get other numbers to compare it to. Usually a school relies on me a lot to put together a budget estimate, send it out to a contractor that we would look at as a preferred contractor that's on this list, and they're within 3.8% of what I budgeted. We feel pretty confident about, one, it's a good price, it was near my estimate, and we know they can do the work, and we have a great past history with this contractor, so we know we can deliver at the budget we need to be at and get good quality work without aggravation and change orders.
Understandable. I'm just a taxpayer here, and I want to make sure that we make good financial decisions where we already have high taxes as it is.
Thank you. Any other questions on baseball, softball? Yes, Mr. Williams.
It's in 2 parts. The company that you were discussing tonight as far as doing the work, are they the same folks that did the grading and did the turf inside the stadium?
Yes.
Yes.
And we were talking about doing it in the proper time zone so that the seeding fell in the fall for the proper growing season. Are those fields going to be placed with grass again, or are those going to be astroturf?
They're grass.
There'll be grass.
Yeah, the only thing that is synthetic is just because of the wear and tear, is the bullpens in the back fence.
One other small, the football practice and the soccer practice field, they're outlined on there and they're not highlighted. I know the work is mainly for the ball fields. Is there any consideration in the future about, is there drainage issues with those fields also? Is there any issues with those fields?
We are not considering any additional work in those fields. If anything, they get dry, especially the football practice field. And Mr. Geis, can you speak to?
The soccer field will get a little, I'll use the word moist, towards the lower part of the picture. So all the rain that falls in there, you can touch on this, any rain that falls or any water that falls flows from the top of the picture down to the bottom of the picture. Now in soccer, when you're practicing soccer, you don't need a huge area to practice soccer. A lot of soccer coaches said they can practice with a full team inside this room. So we provide a full field so that different areas can be used and if they have full scrimmage. So football will be unaffected, as Mr. Link pointed out. That is completely hard pan throughout the season. It's very firm. If anything, we could use a little bit of water on that. But to reduce the cost of the project, we're focusing on baseball and softball only.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have one more question. You know, talking about spending all this money and stuff, and I was a little league coach, I coached Connie Mack and stuff, and Slant here and stuff. But it seems like the sporting in this area here, is the kids are not coming out like they used to and stuff. So we're talking, and I agree, fields should be done and stuff like that, but spending all this kind of money and stuff, and the only team that is going to be playing, using these fields is the high school field, high school team. What other teams are there? So they're going to sit there all this time doing nothing.
What it does open up, you have Northern Valley Baseball uses it also with permanent complexing like this. No baseball was allowed to be used during the fall because of injury possibilities for soccer and football. So at this point, with the fencing and with permanent baseball, we will have the option to rent out those facilities all the way up through October, any type of fall ball. If anybody's familiar with fall ball, so the board will be able to set up any type of rental fees like we do with our stadium. And if you're familiar with our stadium, we get a lot of soccer use, we get a lot of rentals. Right.
But yeah, synthetic turf too, that's a big plus too.
But again, the reason was because we didn't have a dedicated baseball field. This is a complete shared facility in which there's major overlap, and it deems them almost unusable in the fall because you have soccer and football practicing at that time, and there's no way that you could be able to practice baseball or something during those particular times.
But after high school's over, till fall comes, all those months it's just sitting there.
Well, as I pointed out, Northern Valley has used our baseball field, which I believe is Connie Mack or Legion.
We didn't have a Connie Mack for the past couple of years.
So if I believe, Greg, Northern Valley used our facility this past summer,
They did, yes.
Yeah, they did, so it has been used and will be used. And again, the board will be able to set up rental fees, nominal rental fees, and that can additional revenue for the district, as well as provide usage for area teams, and then provide a place for our baseball players to play in the summer, opposed to traveling to Northwestern or Palmerton or other locations outside our district.
Mr. Geis, I'd like to just comment on that. Looking at our students who utilize those fields currently, the safety on those fields is not where it needs to be. So if we want our students and our student athletes to come out and play, I understand exactly what you're saying, but in my mind, safety has to come first, and our fields are not at that level.
I understand that.
And-
I remember like that when I was a kid. 30 years.
They haven't been
changed in 30 years. So hearing that and looking at that, putting our quality and who we are of Northern Lehigh and putting that up front, only place that hasn't been touched, I agree, in 30 plus years. So for the safety and the quality and the value of our students and what we want Northern Lehigh to be portrayed as, we need to do something. Truly, I do believe that.
It's also part of our physical education program in our high school, and middle school will be able to use it as well. So it's for the benefit of our students, not just after school, but also during the school day.
Any other questions? So, I guess I'm going to ask the question, would the committee like to give direction now on whether they would like to separate out the baseball, softball complex? Or would you like to wait until after McClure gives their presentation, or do you feel you have enough information now to give direction to administration for baseball, softball?
I do. I think there's enough there to separate it.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, then this agenda, I'm going to look to you, maybe if you can get us, contractor review.
Yep.
And we'll target for this upcoming Monday for the board meeting.
I appreciate it. I'll be there. Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your time,
All right,
Tyler.
thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, we will transition to our next agenda item, which is the solar array presentation. Mr. Hawes, I think you can access that presentation from the agenda if you'd like to present it. And this evening from the McClure Company, we have Alyssa Wigginfield, as well as Dip Smith and Dalton West, to present and answer questions related to the proposed solar projects.
Everybody has a handout. I know I left a couple extras out. If you need extras, I'll put one here. Thanks for having us again tonight. We're just going to give you kind of a quick overview of the solar analysis that we completed for both the main campus here and for Peters Elementary. As Matt said, my name is Alyssa Wigginfield. I'm an engineer with McClure. I've been with them 15 years. With me is Dalton. He's our solar developer and our solar engineer, Dick. Throughout this presentation, if the board has questions throughout, feel free to flag us down. We'll also leave some time at the end. So if you want to go to the next slide, McClure has a long relationship doing energy projects with the district back into 2018. I've been involved in all three phases, and so this would be a little bit different of an energy project that we've done so far for the district. So if you go to slide 3, this energy project is going to be through what's called a power purchase agreement. The reason we do that is we want to leverage all incentives and rebates that are available for the district. So by partnering with a private entity like McClure, the district then becomes eligible for what's called an investment tax credit. You also are eligible for any federal and state depreciation. So the IRS says McClure has to own it for a minimum of 5 years. We have to own, operate, and maintain it. At the end of the 5 years, the district can buy the system out or continue to lease up to 30 years. 30 years is the warranty on the panel. The panels themselves have a life of about 40 years. So if you do the max lease at 30 years, after 30 years, the district would have two options. One, McClure removes the system from the field. We put the field back to the way it was. The second option is to ask McClure to abandon it in its place, and it would become the district's asset. So any questions on that? The right-hand side, just a photo of Mifflin County School District. This was a solar array we just completed. It's the largest array that we know of in the state of Pennsylvania for a K through 12 school. It's about 5 megawatts. If you go to the next slide, slide 4, we'll start talking about the analysis we did here at Northern Lee High School District. So the first analysis we completed was for Peters Elementary. It couldn't be a part of the main campus array because it's too far. It's 2 miles as the crow flies, is when you can connect multiple schools. Because this is outside that 2-mile radius, it would need a standalone system. So the standalone system we are proposing, you see the little box in the corner, the back of the field, that would serve 100% of the district's 533,000 kilowatt hours of electricity it uses annually. And it would be about a half a megawatt or 400 kilowatt system, and could save the district over 30 years $670,000. So let's go to the next slide and we can tell you how we came up with that number.
Can you go a little slower by any chance?
Sure.
Thank you. Could you go back a slide?
Yep. Can we go back to slide 4?
What's up?
Can we go back to slide 4? Thank you.
Again, the presentation's posted on the public agenda that was posted. It's hyperlinked there so the community can access it through there at their will.
Is 670 annually? Or is it over the?
We're gonna hold questions until the presentation's done, and then we're gonna give the board an opportunity to ask questions, and then we'll open it up to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is the cash flow. So this is how we came up with the $670,000 value. So what we'll do is we'll go from left to right on the columns and we'll explain which each column means. So we'll start with column 1. This represents years 1 through 30. This is the most conservative option that's available to the district. So if you buy the system out after 5 years, you get the highest savings. If you lease it the maximum term of about 30 years, it's the least amount of savings. So those are your 2 bookends. Right now we're focusing on the most conservative bookend possible with what we know today. Now this 30-year power purchase agreement is for Peters Elementary only. It's $0 out of pocket, and it will generate 533,000 kilowatt hours in its first year. So column 2 represents how many kilowatt hours of electricity that this solar field will provide to the district. Now you'll notice that 533,000 in column 2 does decrease over time. That is because solar panels naturally degrade over time about 0.5%, and will reduce its efficacy to about 86% at year 30. That column 2 does represent 100% of today's electrical energy use that solar field will be able to produce. So we're trying to match the side with what Peters needs. Column 3 represents your existing electrical cost. That's escalated at 3% per year, and that would be what you would pay PPL if you did nothing. We use 3% because if you look over the last 40 years of commercial energy rates for schools, you would see a 3.3 escalation. You see some ups, you see some downs, but if you draw a straight line, it's 3.3%. So we think a 3% escalation makes sense to use here. Column 4 represents a fixed power purchase agreement. This is the dollars that instead of paying PPL in column 3, you would pay to McClure. This value includes all the rebates and incentives that are available right now. So remember that 30% tax rebate from the feds. It also includes degradation. It includes PPL utility rebates and solar renewable energy credits. Column 4 also includes solar maintenance over the next 30 years. So that maintenance, again, as you're leasing the system in terms, we have to own, operate, and maintain it. So this represents the maintenance it will need. It also includes at year 15 an inverter replacement. This inverter is what takes DC electricity, converts it to AC electricity for what your buildings need. Keep in mind, at the end of 30 years, if you decide to keep the system, you're going to have to replace the inverters once again. So that's something you want to budget for as that time gets closer. So column 5, if you subtract column 3, what you paid PPL if you did nothing, from column 4, what you paid to McClure, you get the annual savings in column 5, and we're showing cumulative savings in column 6. So that's how we got to the 670,000. So that's just for Peters. So now let's switch gears and take a look at the main campus. Slide 6 is the main campus, so this would serve all of the buildings here at the campus, including high school, middle school, Slatington Elementary, and the field house. So if you look at all those meters, you add up how many kilowatt hours they use, you're looking at about 2.4 million kilowatt hours. So when it comes time to size that field, again, we're sizing it for 100% of the load here at this campus. You'll see that location is in that lower left-hand corner. And financially, we also modeled a 30-year power purchase agreement. Similar to Peters, we're taking the most conservative option for what we know today. Again, $0 out of pocket, and the district has the ability to save $2.5 million. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, we'll show you the cash flow on this. So it's the exact same cash flow we showed you for Peters, but this would be for the main campus. So it's for that 1.8 kilowatt or 1,800 kilowatt, 1.8 megawatt system, $0 up front. You see column 2 is how much energy it's going to generate. McClure guarantees this generation. At the end of the year, we check it. We write it for the number 70 days. If there's a shortfall in what McClure promised kilowatt hour wise, we're responsible for the distance times the difference times the retail rate. So you're guaranteed to have this much kilowatt hour production. Column 3 shows you if you do nothing, what you pay to PPL. You subtract that, so what you pay McClure, that's column 4. That gives you column 5, which is the annual savings, and then column 6 is just cumulatively adding those values. So by doing the project at the main campus, you'd be looking at an additional $2.5 million. So both of these cash flows are standalone. Slide 8. Number of benefits, I hit on most of these already that we're guaranteeing production. Right-hand side is Steel Highspire School District. This is the first 100% powered K-12 school project that we've done. It opened last summer, and they actually did a 20-year term as the Mifflin County, so that seems to be a common term. So tonight we're showing you 30. When we come back in the spring, we're going to show you many intervals so you can make decisions on when buying the system is right for the district. Slide 9 is the timeline. So you notice we separated out Peters Elementary and the main campus from the timeline. Currently, we are at step 3. We are under a letter of intent. We've already completed preliminary design. So right now we're doing the due diligence process. So as you heard previously from ELA, the main campus due diligence process is very complicated. It's going to take a lot of time. As of now, a lot of these approvals and studies McClure is going to do at our own risk. If we get to a point where a specialized study is required, we will come back to you guys, let you know what that study is, and you can make another decision. But we're very early on in the due diligence process for the main campus. That municipality approval is already out 6 to 9 months, so we'd be looking at doing construction of the main campus in summer of 2024. Now, Peters is a more simplistic process. There's still a number of municipalities approvals we need to go through, but our hopes is to be back later this spring with final numbers, costs, and savings for your review and potential board action. And this would be something that we could start this summer if that was of interest to the board. So that's our timeline. If you want to go to the next slide, slide 10 is our contact information and some of our solar references. At this point, we'll push pause and answer any questions you guys might have.
So Melissa, you said?
From the board members, any questions?
Yeah. As of right now, there's been no financial outlay from the board, correct? McClure's just doing everything at their own risk, as you phrased it.
Correct. There's been no outlay from the board at this point.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, trying to combine the earlier presentation the gentleman gave with the wetlands layout and the current layout you have in here, with not being able to put panels where the wetlands territories are, is there still enough coverage area to get what we need for the project?
As of now, we believe so. As ELA Group said, they haven't determined whether we can or can't, so we're still working through. We're hoping with this next phase of wetland study, we'll be able to finalize that, so that's kind of where we are.
Okay. Now, the actual solar fields, Now, these are panels that are gonna be raised brackets, I assume. Now, underneath the brackets, is it gonna be stone? Is it gonna be grass? Is it gonna be, what kind of material are we talking about?
Typically, we do grass. I think you can do stone. Yes. More a preference. That area would probably be best to do a grass with your wetlands.
So now with this, especially the first 5 years, all the maintenance is included now, are we on the hook for the grass part of that, or?
Yes.
Okay. So the technical maintenance is included, but not the actual physical upkeep of the property?
Correct. That's something that we could involve into the PPA numbers. We don't have it represented here. Most districts select to do that themselves, but that is something we could add to, of course, scope of work if that's interest.
Kind of a two-phase question. So with that, going into that, Mr. Durr, how are we able to handle that additional workload? How do the guys feel about taking on that?
I think we're able to take on the additional workload. If I understand correctly, we're only looking to just keep the grass mowed down, I don't know, maybe once a month or something like that. I guess it all depends on how high the grass, how much the grass grows, but, we can take care of it, yes. I would say it's not like manicuring around your house or like we do around here. There's no weed whacking, it's just strictly go in, mow it all quick and get out.
Just let the grass grow through the fence?
Good question. We'd probably have to maintain the fence somehow, yes.
Are the two projects, would they have to be done at the same time? So say the board decides we're not gonna do this area, but we would do Peters. Is that possible to split, or is that all one and you have to decide on everything?
It's possible to split. So we'll be ready to have Peter's final numbers later this spring if you wanted to make a summer 2023 decision for construction. And then what we're recommending for the main campus is it's going to be a 6 to 9 month process until we'll be able to get final numbers, just because of all the additional studies required.
I think page 9 shows that if you go back to page 9, that it could be split.
So yes, we can split the project, yeah, and we're recommending that.
You want? Okay. So right now, we don't know what it would cost for us to do Peters, correct?
That's what the due diligence is for. So we're going through a bunch of approval processes and doing final design, interconnection studies, and our goal is to have that wrapped up this spring.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
And then question piggybacking off the last conversation, there was indication because of the municipality, that one being in Washington Township. What type of permitting is required for Washington Township? Because I believe I might have heard something that it was a little bit more complicated, that they have something else going on.
So, we don't know. Until we get there officially, we won't know exactly. It's not as, if you're referring to Peters, it's not as involved as the main campus. Right now, we will require an MPDS because the total land disturbance is 1.3 acres. Anything over an acre requires that.
What's a PDS, I'm sorry?
It's basically for stormwater, the best way to put it.
Thank you, sorry.
Zoning's one we're unsure about. Will it be a land development? Will we need a sketch plan? Once we get through that process of figuring out exactly what we're doing, we'll know what we need. But we will need some type of zoning, we will need MPDS, and we will need an electrical construction permit.
And the cost for all those permits, et cetera, that's all McClure is handling that?
We're looking into all the permits during the due diligence process, and then when it comes time to take board action, we will have the permit costs already in the construction value number, already in our purchase.
So the numbers in here could change then based upon?
Yes, these numbers could change. They're what we know today. That's why this due diligence process is so important, because how can you make a decision about solar without knowing all the numbers?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have an estimate about maybe what that would have cost, like in the past? How much did it cost? I'm gonna pick a different one besides the one location, but how about Mifflin County?
So I think what you find is these solar projects can range anywhere from $800,000 up to a couple $1 million to install.
And those numbers are in here or not?
They are, yeah, so that's what
Okay.
the power purchase agreement represents, so $0 out of pocket. The idea is to get you cash positive each year, so it makes sense to do solar. And what, in essence, what happens is McClure's is financing the solar for you. So there's other solar companies in the state that do this. McClure self-finances, meaning our mother company actually puts in the equity to do the construction, and you're just paying McClure back. So it's not like we have to go out and find outside investors to invest in this project. You're buying it directly from McClure.
So at the 5-year mark where we make the decision if we were to purchase or continue to lease, that would be based on current market value or like a prorated number?
It would be a fair market value. What we do is bring in a third party to assess what that would be. So we can give you some estimates, but that would come from a third party of what that cost would be.
I think Mrs. Cole had a question.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what you just said about 800,000 to a couple million. Is that what we would pay up front, or is that what's included?
So that's what it's included in the PPA. There's no money out of pocket up front. So that PPA includes the cost for construction, but then it also accounts for any rebates and incentives that are available during that time. So when we come back in the spring, we'll have that fair market value number ready for a 5-year option. We'll show you the 5-year option, a 30-year option, and maybe a few in between, so that you can kind of see that up front, that financial analysis of when is the right time to buy out the system.
That was just to buy out the system, but to get set up, it wouldn't cost us anything out of pocket?
Correct, nothing out of pocket.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was the way it is. So we don't pay a dime when this gets set up.
Correct.
I have a question. You had said that the panels lose about half a percent of power per year. So by year 30, we're at like 85 or 86%?
Yes, that's correct.
The numbers across that line, do they also then represent only
Yes.
86%?
Yes.
So what's listed there as your annual savings, we would have to take into account the additional 14% we would have to pay PP&L?
Correct, and those numbers are already taken.
That's all
added to it.
included in
Yeah.
that?
Yep, good question. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions at the moment from school board members? Mr. Crispin?
My last one, I think.
Yeah, many as you like.
If there's a future presentation, I would just suggest you take the steel tin out of there. Just cross it off, find something else a little better. Start with us.
They're off.
And make sure you renegotiate their contract and charge them about 15% more. Dividends coming back to Northern Lehigh.
I think there is a comment question now, not the question part of the area, but,
Okay, I'm gonna open it up to the community members for questions.
do you have another question?
No, she was explaining why I missed it.
I do have a question. So when you put the solar panels in, are you putting concrete in the ground, like below the frost line to support the, because it gets a lot of high wind?
Correct. It is essentially a foundation. They pile drive it.
So, and when this thing's done, and we decide we don't want them, we're pulling all that concrete out of the ground?
We will take everything off above the ground, so anything underneath
But
the
the
ground, the
concrete
conduit will be
stays.
abandoned in place.
They would be abandoned. Everything,
The grass gets put back to the
it
way
gets
it was.
restored to its original intent.
Everything above grade will be restored.
Either one, sir. Go ahead.
After 30, 40 years, panels might get replaced, correct? Probably.
40 years the panel life, correct.
Okay, so what do the panels cost right now? Replace it right now, what do they cost per panel?
So actually, these panels they have a 30-year warranty.
Right.
So within that 30 years, if there was some sort of issue
I'm
with
talking after the 30 years. I'm looking down the road for my grandkids or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, that's gonna be a tough question for me as well.
Okay, well, what do they cost right now?
Right now, they average anywhere from like $250 to $350 a panel, depending on the
And-
watt
and
size.
how many panels do you tend to put down it?
For which side, Peters?
Yes.
No, I'm talking the big area, I'm not talking about.
We have,
We're still going through final design, but preliminarily,
to give you an exact number, 2,014 modules. Panels are also called modules.
3,000 panels.
2,014 panels.
So probably 30 years down the road, I'm sure it's gonna be one heck of an increase from what they are now, and we're a small community, we won't be able to afford to put the panels in. Unless they raise the taxes, and we're a lower income community, so I'm just saying, I'm just totally against it in this story.
Sir?
I mean, Peter seems fairly straightforward. The topography is easily accessible. More questions directed to the wetlands or the area behind the high school. Have you looked into other alternatives, for example, erecting structures over the parking lot as an alternative, roof utilization to either mitigate or offset completely the building area down there?
we looked at other options. The ground mounted system is your most cost effective option, so it's
Sure.
going to have the greatest return on the investment. Roof mounted systems, you almost need to put it on a brand new roof because those systems are designed to be up there for at least 30 years plus. So you'd want the warranty of a roof to match that.
Did we just do the roof?
Yeah.
2 to 3 years ago.
EPDM, 30-year warranty probably?
30-year warranty.
So it's definitely, and then the other option is, you asked about carport solar. That's typically not very as cost effective because now you're creating structures to put them on.
Understandable, but have you taken a walk back down there to look what the topography is and your cost takes into account all the deforestation?
Yeah, walked it.
Yeah, we both did. I walked from one side to the other.
Okay. Can I just keep going with my notes? Is that okay?
Sure.
I won't be too long. So have you considered other financial analysis or different scenarios if purchase price goes up, down, other incentives come into play down the road? Are there different options from the financial side that have been evaluated? I mean, you presented one financial scenario in terms of cash flow.
Correct.
What about other scenarios if prices go up, go down?
So for the construction cost, prices go up and
For the
down?
project, but also for the leasing over the 30 years?
I think that'll come after
Like
the
a
due
20-year,
diligence. I think.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's what she's,
Okay.
just to clarify, I think that's what you're asking is, if we would go and buy it at 5 years, or we would buy it at 10 years, is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that comes at the end of the due diligence. So we just showed you the most conservative option. When we come back, we will give you lots of options to consider.
Okay. So the project can be separated, the $670,000 that was for the project overall over the 30 years.
Can it be separated from the main campus?
No, you said that the projects can be separated. The next question, the $670,000 that you showed us savings,
For Peters?
there was Peters only?
Correct, Peters
And for
only.
the 30-year,
And for the most conservative option at 30 years, correct.
okay. Do you have an NPV calculation for that as well? Or you just look at cash flow?
We can do that once we get the final numbers.
Okay, that'd be interesting. Thank you.
Net present value.
Other options, other technologies emerging, DC microgrids, for example, converting, saving the inverter, going straight from DC to DC in the buildings, running your cable, your Ethernet, your camera systems over top of that. Is that something that has been considered as an option, especially after 15 years, to avoid the cost of inverters?
We haven't gotten that high tech yet. We're still going with the fundamental way with the AC/DC inverter. Those things are still kind of evolving. The microgrid. So that's not really the approach that we're taking right now.
Any other questions for Mr.
Thank you. Other questions from the community? Mrs. Williams?
Yes, you say the district's going to have to do the inverter replacement, so we're going to need 2 of them. What is the cost?
So the inverter replacement at year 15 is already figured into.
But you did say we have to replace it, but You did inverter?
15 years.
At year 30,
At year 30, you would have to replace it if you decide to keep the system. You,
I thought she said after 15 years, you're gonna replace it. Oh, okay.
Okay.
But if we were to buy it out after 5 years, the inverter would be on.
Yes, the
What
inverter
would
would be
the
on.
cost be for
What would the cost be? Inverters would range from like 10 to 15,000 a piece.
And how many you need?
Depending on the design, 2 to 3. It just goes back to the way we design it.
So we can have that number ready for when we present for Peters in the spring, so you know what that inverter cost would be as well.
And I do have another question, and this might just sound weird. Are you going to do any kind of surveys about health risks with living near solar panels? Because there are studies being done about communities living near solar panels and what the health risks are. So will that be some type of study being done?
Typically, it hasn't been included in our studies.
I mean, it's fairly new.
Yeah.
But
I'm
it's
not
something that I'm
necessarily-
looking into, and I do know the World Health Organization is looking also into this, and they are doing studies. So there could be some type of health risks, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years, maybe 20 years, that we don't know about today. So if there is health risks down the road, there's families, we're living around this. If something does happen, I mean, this is just assuming, what, you know, if somebody gets cancer or something, who's going to be liable for it? So if I get cancer because you put solar panels in, you know, and I can trace it back to the solar panels, who's going to be liable for that? I mean, I know this is all ifs,
Right.
but this is something to think about in the future and something I would like to see some kind of study done.
We have lots of partners. Like I said, I'm not familiar with that study. I can definitely see it. Those are concerns that, you know, other
That sounds.
locations have had, but I'm not familiar with it.
We would appreciate any information you can find for the board and for the community. I will just caveat that if I'm hearing the way you're framing that question, that's probably more of a legal question, which I'm happy to talk to our legal counsel about.
It's just something to be prepared for.
Sure.
You know how things change. You never know.
We'll go here, then there.
Go ahead. So after 5 years, there will be a decision for the board to make whether or not we're gonna purchase the unit and operate our own, or continue to lease for 30 years. So in either case, the commitment that we need to make is for 30 years.
My understanding is the first opportunity we have to purchase it would be at the end of 5 years. But between year 5, the end of year 5, and year 30, we have other opportunities if we would want to purchase it. So it's not like a once and done
Correct,
type
yeah,
of
we have
decision.
renewal options to do the buyout, and there will be early exit fees associated with it.
But there's no option at year 5 to exit if, for whatever reason, the savings or the business case has changed, the business no longer.
My understanding is that we would either continue leasing or we would have to purchase it.
So one or the other, there's no.
So there is a 30-year commitment regardless.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay.
So for the first time, I just heard early exit fee. Is that after the 5 years?
That's the net present value of what the solar array would cost.
So pretty much any time after year 5, could be year 6, it could be year 28. Anywhere in between there, we could collectively meet and say, hey, we want to purchase to be opt out of the lease, correct?
Yeah.
And you're going to show your NPV calculation in the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's also any excess that's generated, we can sell back for additional revenue.
As long as PPL is your default supplier, and you have already been 100% full, then you can sell back up to 110%.
In your experience in other projects that you've done, what are you seeing with any kind of savings being realized through that avenue?
So East Lycoming has exceeded their savings. That was done in 2012. Elizabethtown has exceeded their savings. That was done 2016-ish, and Steele and Mifflin County just came online.
Okay, so, and they've sold back to generate revenue?
Yes, they have negative mail bills.
And that revenue is direct to the district, not to McClure? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Snyder, I think I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with that, buying it back. Is that when you own them or when you're under the lease? If you generate more power? Who's selling it? Are you guys taking the extra energy and selling it to PP&L to recoup your costs, or?
So
is
the
district-
money that you get back will be on your PPL bill, and that goes right to the district. You're just paying in a rate to us for any kilowatt hours that the solar field generates. Good question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
I know you guys are salespeople, really trying to pitch this, but in your honest opinion, being in the field, so in the last 5 years, how fast is this technology changing? So my question is, in like, 8 years from now, is there gonna be like hydrogen or something better than this? Like, do you think that this is gonna be outdated in 8 years?
Panels haven't changed. I'll let Dennis.
No, I don't think, I mean, it's just kind of similar to even computers and just like everyday technology that we use. It's a constantly evolving process for the betterment of everybody, but I don't think this 30-year investment is going to be outdated where it won't perform. You're still getting a guaranteed production, and that is what you're getting. So can it be better? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be outdated where you can't use your existing investment.
This does not include any battery storage.
So, this evening, does the committee have to give direction to administration as far as splitting Peters and main campus? If any of this needs to move forward, what kind of direction do we need to give to you this evening?
So we're gonna.
Knowing that an actual board vote will not occur this month.
Correct.
And probably not next month, because it sounds like you have quite a bit of work to do.
We have a lot of work to do, so we appreciate your continued patience as we go through this due diligence process. We do not need any action from anybody or direction. We're going to continue down this pathline with the timelines and the locations we've shown. If there's other things you want us to look at or other things you want to add to our study, let us know. And if any point during the study you want us to stop, we can also stop.
If something comes up and basically they say no, we haven't outlaid any money, right? So if we're told no from zoning or from the wetlands or something, it is what it is.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. It will stop the process and we will come back and report that to you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is it possible, since the roof at the high school is relatively new, to look at what that cost savings would be as an option instead of the wetland area, or is that something that's kind of off the table? I'm just curious, because I keep going back to that wetland area, and I keep going back to that area and what it is, and I know, Greg, you said we have people that can go do that. That's not an easy place to get to, and seeing what's back there and doing all that stuff, trying to wrap my head around making that spot work, I'm really struggling. So if we want to move forward with something, I just don't know if that location makes the most sense. So I don't know what our other options are, and I think the community would like to hear that just as much as some of us sitting here.
So the size of the array won't be able to fit all in the high school. So not only would we shrink the array to do that, the cost savings we did back in the napkin very early on and found out that just was not as cost effective, on the return on your investment. Now certainly we are happy to take a look at it if that is the direction of the administration and board. But we were challenged to come back with the most cost-effective option for your consideration, and this 2.5 million was the best kind of.
What would it look like if it was just a follow-up with Mrs. Husak's question? I heard you say the high school.
Yeah, and pick a building, I don't know.
But it seems to me
Somewhere
to
other than
match
that.
the surface area of the proposed area, it would be probably all of our rooftops. Is that, you know?
Because you have to remember, we do a whole structural assessment, you know, based on the size of the array, how heavy the loads for your roof, so that dictates where they can go, how many we can put, the spacing. So-
Shadows from rooftop equipment.
Would it be possible, if that were the direction to go, and let's say to equal that surface area now of the panels,
As an alternate.
to do like middle school rooftop, high school rooftop, Slatington rooftop, and still all connect it back, right? Because it all actually has to go back to the connection point down behind the high school.
But then, just a quick question, but then in doing that and putting on Slatington Elementary School, this building was built in 2012? When the roof was done? So we've already got 10 years worth of roof here, so we're only looking at 20 years. So we could have to remove every panel that's on this roof to replace a roof, which is more money to do that than at that point in time.
And then you'd have decentralized electrical systems. So right now, all three of these buildings are sharing, because of the ground mounted system, are all sharing one electrical system. Now we'd go to three, so everything we do 3 times.
Would the board, would the committee like to have some sort of kind of mock-up proposal of what that would look like for multiple rooftops?
I think so. Yeah, I think the hang-up is, like Ms. Husak said, same thing. The location of that wetlands down there is just not sitting well with me. So I would definitely like to see different options.
Sure.
You know, the Peters one, when he said, that's pretty straightforward, that's easy. I don't think there's anyone really in opposition to that one. But yeah, definitely.
How would that affect our roof warranties that we have?
So we'll work with the roofing manufacturers to make sure that no warranties would be voided.
Okay. Because I mean, we spent a lot of money putting those roofs up.
Yeah, we do it with HVAC all the time with roofing manufacturers, because when we penetrate, so it's just bringing them on site and making sure we follow the rules.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Going through that kind of exploratory process of
Yes.
what we just asked you to do, how may that affect timelines if we don't go that direction? Like, can you run both simultaneously?
Simultaneously. And the goal maybe when we present later this spring is to have those numbers, just like a budget case scenario, and then we can make a decision. We'll have more information back, hopefully, about the main campus, where we are with the due diligence process, present that budget, we'll put them side by side, and then we can kind of decide where we want to go from there, if that works for everybody.
Just one more quick question, going back to the roof idea. Are there any concerns about the additional weight of the structures? The structure itself and then plus snow as well. I mean, we are here in the Northeast, so.
So you, before that can actually happen, you would actually need to have a structural engineer sign off on it.
So we'll make the assumption that the structure's good for our initial assessment, and then if we move forward with the due diligence, that's where we bring in structural engineers to do the actual.
What they do then is we get an outside company to design a racking layout. We give that to the engineer does his roofers, he'll come on site, do an assessment, and he'll say, yeah, you can do this many, this is the load, these can't go here, it has to be spaced. They figure all that out. And then that's where we decide if it's actually possible.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
As far as access, you said that you gentlemen were down there. How did you guys get in there?
So I was with Greg. Me and Greg, we walked from the high school end, the whole way
We
down?
walked in behind baseball, softball.
Correct.
So you went down behind baseball, softball. So how do you propose getting access for the construction of the solar panels down there? And where are you going to get into maintaining them?
So we threw around two ideas. The best way to do it, most cost effective, is to cut in off the municipal road, like either, I forget what the roads are called down there.
Ski club.
Okay. So we modeled that kind of to show you where those could be, so that'd be up, if that's how you want to do it, that's better than cutting in away from the high school and coming down.
Where do you have those models? Was that someplace on your too?
It was on our due diligence. I believe we gave that to you.
It's not on this here.
I haven't seen anything. I know originally it said that they were planning on trying to do access from the high school if possible. was all that it was worth. But I didn't see any kind of maps or anything that showed anything
Yeah,
otherwise
'cause that's-
going off
Because
of.
we're still pretty
Yeah.
early on in the due diligence, so we want to make sure we have, before we show any preliminary layouts, further than this, that we have.
And it also involves the LA group, if we would, depending on how we do it, because it affects the wetlands potentially where it's at. That's why we kind of strayed away from coming down from the high school. And also, they have to be more upgrade, like it affects stormwater, so we don't want where all the stormwater is going into your site. We want it to be going away from the site, so.
Back into the road.
Right, well, storm drains,
Sure.
if there are.
Our house.
Um, how big is the area on the main that you're proposing? I wasn't sure if that was to scale right there where the blue lines are.
Mostly is. We pulled it right off our model, so yeah, I would say it's to scale.
So you said at Peters it was like 1.3 acres. How big is that?
I don't know, I don't have it in front of me. When I say, so Peters is actually 0.6 of an acre, but when you do all of your excavation earthwork, the total land disturbance is 1.3.
Got it.
I think this one was around 2.
Yeah, it was
2.5.
upwards of 2.
Yeah.
2?
Yeah, correct.
So, but the difference in, that doesn't make sense to me because,
I'm saying the array, the total land disturbance, I believe, is about 5.
okay, but at Peters, the megahertz was what, 533,000? And how big is, how much power do we need? 2.4 million?
Get 2.4 million hours for 1.8 megawatts.
So that's like 5 times as much. But we're only gonna disturb half an acre more for 5 times as much power?
These are based on our preliminary models currently, yes.
So we will have more answers once the due diligence.
I just like to reiterate that. So we're gonna disturb about 1.25 acres for,
We have to remember, it's easier to get into. That's why the disturbance is different.
okay.
Like Peters is very,
Peters is easier to get into,
absolutely,
so we disturb much less.
correct.
So this is harder to get into, and
It
it's
is, you
5
have to
times.
cut an access road.
Yeah, and it's 5 times bigger, so we're gonna disturb
A lot
possibly
more wood.
way more.
The approximate total disturbance is 5 acres, which is pretty significant.
What is the building setback from the wetlands?
I do not know that answer, that would be an ELA group answer, I don't know off the top of my head.
You don't have that information, do you, sir?
I do not.
I know we talked about that briefly last time. They said 150 feet was the building setback from the wetlands. That's why I asked. From the wetlands.
Oh, you're talking the solar site? Okay, I confused me, I'm sorry, with building. So I believe they determined that I think they originally thought it was 50 feet or 150, I can't remember. I believe
They said 50.
yes, I believe it was 50.
Because I walked back there with the GPS the other day, and if you mark where the wetlands are, there's only 2.7 acres in there.
Right.
If you include a setback of 150 feet from the wetlands. So there's only 2.7 acres if you stretch it as far as you can from the wetlands. So how are they gonna do that if they take 5 acres to?
That's part of why there's a part 2 to the wetlands. We need an official determination before.
It seems like that part of it, being able to use some maps and see where the surveying it seems like that part of it should be pretty easy to conclude without spending a whole lot of money and doing a lot more. I feel like you could probably save yourself a lot of time and legwork by just looking at that and saying, oh wait, there's not enough room there.
But they don't base it necessarily off of that. The conservation district is more worried about, not necessarily that the wetlands are there, about disturbance of the wetlands. So it's not necessary that there's only 2 point, whatever you said, that's what they're still trying to figure out.
I'm going, kind of switching gears a little bit. Alyssa?
Yeah.
You said that McClure's gonna finance the project? For free, or how much are they charging us to finance it?
As what the PPA column was in the cash flow, so that would become the new rate.
So does that break down to like an actual, like a percentage rate?
It's a kilowatt hour rate, so you take column 2 divided by column 4, and that would be your new kilowatt hour. Dollars per kilowatt hour, so column 4 divided by column 2. So it would be less of a rate than you're paying today. And that rate embedded in it is the construction costs and everything that's associated with erecting this array.
What's your internal rate of return? Is this something you share?
I was just gonna say that.
You have no project just for fun and free.
So what we need to do is finalize this cost assessment and get that information back to
So
you.
that's also something with the NPV calculation and IRR.
Yes, we'll have an NPV calculation.
And then, how do you get the power from those solar panels back behind the high school?
So there's two different ways. I mean, obviously, you could trench overhead, not trench, I'm sorry, run the lines overhead, which isn't recommended, or it's going to be a little more costly up front, which would be to trench it.
So why is it not recommended to go overhead?
Well, it would depend on how it's set up. Because you have a lot of trees, it could require more maintenance in the future. Typically, when you're in a wooded area, we try not to go overhead.
Would it be fair to say that trenching through those wetlands is gonna be very hard to overcome? And if you guys.
It definitely could be a challenge. I can't lay out exactly what that path is going to look like because we need to determine, we need the final part of this wetland study finished first. Pretty much everything's dictated on that.
And what about if the power's going back behind the high school, the creek and the ravine in there, how do you overcome that? Are you gonna have to cross that some way, or?
It's going to be up to we have an electrical engineer, it's going to be up to them, and it's going to be up to whatever is laid out as, you can take your interconnection path here, you have to stay away from here. I don't know exactly, I've gotten that much into the weeds on that yet.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your time and efforts on this. And so knowing that no decision needs to be made tonight, it doesn't sound like we need to give you any direction moving forward, other than please continue to communicate with us.
Great, you too.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone.
Thank you. Safe drive.
Thanks for coming. Safe drive home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think he's still bitching about Steelton, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Moving on then to the slide next page.
You have another?
Sorry, question?
I mean, I know they'll be coming back in spring with more information in the book. How would we know? Like, should we just keep looking like the website?
I would say keep an eye on the, excuse me.
Email out and ask you, hey, is it coming back April or May?
Well, the agendas are always posted the Friday before. Keep an eye on the agendas. Once we know, it'll show up on that next agenda.
Thank you.
Okay,
And I
thank you.
have a couple more questions. What are we currently paying per kilowatt hour with PPO, and do we have another supplier? Do you know off the top of your head?
We purchased through a consortium,
Yeah.
so I'll look to, do you know the rate off the top of your
Greg, do
head?
you know, is it 0.03 cents, something like that?
It's close to that.
Yeah.
And our current agreement runs out June 30th of
June
this
30th of
this year. And it's out for bid right now for pricing.
Okay, because when I just did the math, I came up with 0.08 being the kilowatt hour according to what they just said.
That's a living campus, and then it's 0.092 cents.
So I'm just wondering, can't we, just by shopping around, end up getting the same type of rate without having to do a solar panel array and all that? I mean, just curious.
To get the same rate as what they're projecting that our cost will be after the savings?
According to what I just figured out, the 0.8 is a really good rate for electric right now. I mean, being that residential's 14,
So we'll know what our new rate is, when's that bid close?
businesses are always much less than residential.
So February 17th, we will know what the new rates will be.
So can we do a
And then,
comparison
and
with
then we
that?
can at that point run those calculations.
Awesome.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Up next on the agenda this evening, we have an item that we're looking for direction from the committee to take to the board or not. This is the purchasing of License technology. These would be, they look similar to kind of smoke detectors for us to be able to put in some of our areas in the high school and middle school in particular. What they do is they detect if students are vaping in those areas. and then send a message directly to administration as to, time, which location it is. So we're looking at this as a deterrent, but also if we need to go back and check surveillance to see who was actually doing it when they exit the bathroom into the hallway. This would be funded through one of the PCCD grants that we have available, and administration is recommending to the committee to support this so we can take it to the full board for consideration Monday evening. Again, total cost for the number of units that we're looking to get at the high school and middle school would be $8,338, purchased through the PCCD grant.
Is this, there's no video attached to these, because I'm assuming you're
No.
putting them in the bathroom.
There's no video whatsoever.
Okay.
They sense anomalies in the air,
Okay.
and they're programmed to pick up, certain discharges that will go into the air, smoking, vaping, that type of stuff.
Mr. Link, do we have a lot of issues with this?
We do have issues with vaping. You may have noticed we have a few vape shops around the community, and our students unfortunately do bring the vape devices into the buildings.
It's like Whitehall's version of mattress stores.
It's a good analogy. So it's time consuming, it's frustrating, and it's really obviously, at the end of the day, not good for our students. So we would like to take action, kind of, one, proactively as a deterrent, but then also if we need to do an investigation, these can help us quickly narrow it down and send a hall monitor, a police officer, an administrator directly to that building, honestly, within seconds, as soon as they get a text to their phone.
And that's all grant funded?
I'm sorry?
Grant funded?
It's grant funded through the Pennsylvania Crime Commission.
Yeah. I would say put it on the agenda.
And that's within policy, there's no policy changes, or I'm assuming not, but is there a policy attached to it that may have to be looked at through policy?
We could look at that, but it doesn't look like it would affect any of our existing policies or that we would have to enact a new policy.
Perfect.
Because honestly, we're not, like we said, it doesn't fall into cameras or recordings or any of those type of policies.
Thank you.
Yes.
What's the lifespan on these things?
I can find that out for you. I don't have it here.
I'm supportive of it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how long they're gonna last and what we're on the hook for to replace them after X amount of years.
Sure.
$2,000.
We can absolutely.
It would be similar to smoke detectors, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would suspect it would be the same, but we can look into that.
And vaping is on the high rise right now, especially even middle school.
Is there anything on those for, like, if they try to fake them out, or they try to disarm them?
If they're disturbed, it also sends a message. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Okay, then we'll have that as an agenda item for Monday evening. And I will try to get the kind of product life expectancy for you by then. Okay. Okay, up next, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Hill, and we're going to discuss some copier lease items.
Good evening, everybody. The only thing I have on the agenda tonight for technology is our district-wide copier lease. This is more for information. Our current lease we signed, it was about 4 years ago. Our lease will expire on June 30th at the end of our fiscal year. So right now we are looking into getting some quotes to renew the lease. So just for some informational purposes, last time we did this, we kind of switched over to a centralized printing. Everybody uses, we have something called paper cut software, so when people print, they go to the office copiers. It's been working great over the last 4 years, so our plan is to continue with the centralized printing. And essentially, things have been going well with the copying, so we're looking to keep the same number of copiers that we have, and also in the same locations. The only adjustment that we may make is we looked at the usage. We may adjust a few copiers. We may go like a size larger in a few areas, and then there's a couple areas where we identified that we're not using as much as we thought we would, so we're going to bring those down. But other than that, we're planning on keeping the copiers pretty much the same. And the last thing we're looking at there too is we're looking at an option to do a lot of our copiers in the main office areas have fax machines as well. So we're looking to go with like a digital fax solution. That could save us some potential money on the lease because now you're not, there's like a module that they have to put in the machines that you pay for on a monthly basis. So that would, it looks like we could offset that cost and it would actually be cheaper. So we're looking at like a digital fax solution rather than having the faxes in the copiers. So that's just for informational purposes. Over the next few months, we're going to be looking at some options there. And I'll report back when we have some more information and some quotes for some leasing. So that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
How long is the lease planned for?
The last lease we had was 4 years. So the current company that we lease with, I asked them to provide they're going to provide us a 4 and a 5 year lease option. And then any other companies that we contact as well. I had a couple companies contact me over the last year, and I told them to get back to me around this time if they want to provide a quote. So we're looking at we'll look at another 4 or a 5 year option. I asked them to give us both options.
Is there any thought on maybe like your lower usage ones or in areas that might not need them to actually go out and buy them instead of lease them and going on a print?
We can look at that, but what's included with the lease though is one of the nice things about a lease is they include the maintenance costs. So like we don't pay any maintenance costs. If they break down, they come and fix them. It also, within the lease, they include the toner as well. For like black and white prints, we don't, that's all included in our lease. So we don't have to pay anything extra there. Color though, we do have some color copiers and we do have a color printers. Those we do pay, like we have a certain amount that we're allowed to print. If we go over that, that's where the software comes in. We can control that. We can tell people, hey, if you printed 500 sheets, you're not allowed anymore because you went over your limit. So that's one of the issues. If we buy them ourselves, now we're on the hook for the toner, for the maintenance and things like that. So sometimes the toner can get very expensive for us to buy.
Yeah, they usually offer maintenance agreements.
Yeah.
On them too.
There are some options there, yes.
That are sometimes less expensive than those lease options.
Yep.
And maybe in those areas that we don't have
Yeah, and
the heavy usage
right.
units.
And the
Obvious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's something we can look into. One of the things that we did the last time was we actually lowered the number of printers and we kind of went to a centralized printing and saved money that way. So that's why we were looking to kind of continue that. But it's something we can look into. So, yeah.
I like the idea, just to
Just as
understand,
an option.
there might be some savings.
May not be.
I think the main copiers would definitely be at least the areas I'm thinking, we do have a few printer, like color printers that are included in that lease. Like that's an option we can look into depending on the cost. But again, we'd have to break out the cost, see how much it's cost us per month to do it. But yeah, that's something we'll look at, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Hill.
Anything else on anything else? If not, I would look for a motion to adjourn, and we will then go on to finance.
Hello, hi, Nikki, I guess you are first. Cafeteria update. Well, I'm definitely consolidating my bullet points here. I'm gonna fly through this much faster than I planned, so. Just wanna say thank you again to the Lehigh Valley Educators Credit Union for the $10,000 donation for supporting our Backpack Buddies program. This will definitely allow us through the rest of the year and also next year be able to provide meals to those that need food for over the weekend. The Giant Roundup at the Register program is still going on through the end of February, and then we actually will be presented with a check through on March 6th. So hopefully, if anyone shops at Giant and wants to, round up as they go through the line, much appreciated. We use those funds to reduce student meal debt. Staffing, we're happy to be fully staffed come February 13. We just had 2 new staff members accept positions with us. So that's very exciting for us. Then I did just want to mention, usually around January, February is when manufacturers start sending out emails saying, as of January, Tyson products will be 7 to 14% higher food costs. So unfortunately, we've received a lot of those types of emails recently. We have been trying to look for more ways to save money in terms of, we used to go to Produce Junction every week and buy our produce, but now we are part of the DoD Fresh program, which is a grant of funds available to us that we can get fresh produce delivered every week, so we've been able to save there. We also have increased our monthly a la carte sales district-wide from like 3,500 to about 6,000 to 7,000. So, any little bit like that helps. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is we did just recently pay that initial training and installation fee for our new POS software of $3,900, and we are looking to schedule trainings in the month of February and March. There's a series of 4 different trainings that the food service staff as well as administration will have, and then we are looking to go live with that April 3rd. So we have 2 months to get everybody trained up, and along with that, we will be at that time switching over from our K-12 payment software to the Primero Edge version of that. So there'll be, a series of messages coming from me, just getting the word out to parents that as of this date, balances will transfer over to the new program, and if you want to have an account through Primero Edge to load money onto your student's account, that would be for, additional meal purchases and a la carte sales and stuff like that. So the meal, breakfast and lunch is still, free, and then if there's any additional meal purchases or a la carte purchases, we encourage parents to load money periodically onto their student's account. And they don't have to do it electronically either. It can be done cash or check. It's just sent in with their student, and we can upload it that way. So that's it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're putting the software in. Do you guys track the free meals that go through, or do they not be part of the POS system?
Yeah, we still ring everybody out. It just is zeroed out for what we're charging them, but they still are tracked in the student's history, every time they purchase. Well, not purchase, but receive a breakfast or lunch, because those reports I print out monthly, and that's what I submit to the state for reimbursement. That's my meal count. So it's all tracked in the system.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
With the food prices increasing, how is that working with, like you said, you submit your food count? Are we getting that same dollar for dollar back from those programs, or are we ending up, because of the increases now, are we seeing actually a loss in those, even though that we're in that program?
Our participation wise has stayed steady since basically the start of the school year. It increased a little bit, like just overall, like anywhere between 1,000 to 1,100 kids every single day, district-wide, eat with us lunch. So, and breakfast is slowly on the rise too. But I mean, we get a set dollar amount per breakfast and lunch that doesn't change with that, from the state. So like they set those reimbursement rates before the school year starts, and that's what we get back. It doesn't change or fluctuate with inflation. Now we did get last year, which I don't think, or I haven't at least heard yet, that those supply chain assistance funds, we got two sets of funds. That whole intention of that last year was because of coming off of COVID and having issues with the supply chain and stuff like that. So that did help that year, but that was last year, and I haven't heard anything about receiving any kind of funds like that this year yet. So,
I'm just curious if we were dollar for dollar, or if we're starting to actually see it. Even the great news is we're able to support our students and get them meals that they need, but what is that doing to our district budget on what we're putting out?
We are
hearing 14% on Tyson, for instance?
So, I
That's a
mean,
large increase.
it's usually specific products too, so we're trying to steer away from the ones we know, have gone up, and we're trying to utilize more of our commodity foods through a different vendor that we get at a significantly discounted price. So we're trying to base our menus off from now through the end of the year on those products versus buying all the, processed Tyson, stuff that nuggets and all that stuff that's gonna be the heavy cost items. So it's just a matter of managing the menu a little bit better to dodge some of those high costs, I guess you could say. So that's our current plan.
Mrs. Maltors, what's the health of our food services budget right now? Is it, you can describe it in a color, red or black?
Black. She's still doing well,
That's what I'm
yes.
asking.
She's still doing well. Yes, she still has money left in her fund balance. Right now, it doesn't, remember she had to pay $33,000 for that dishwasher that she wanted at the middle school. So it's not looking as good because of that $33,000, but she's not in the red. She still has black because she had a healthy savings account to start with.
Well done.
Good job.
She's been panicking about that $33,000.
I
I'm like,
saw
you're good, you're good.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink.
35,000.
Any other questions for Mrs. Fink? Okay, hearing none, turn over to Mrs. Maltors.
All right, so my three things that are going to be here are all going to go for the board motion on Monday evening if the board so chooses. The first is the bond refinancing. So Brad Remick and them had reached out to me last week concerning that portion of that 2018 bond that we did not refinance at the time when we could do the refinancing of the bonds, and that was because it was a taxable part of the bonds and there was no savings there. So that they had proposed, and they did talk about it at that point in time, that once it gets closer to that September 1st of 23 call date, we could see a savings. So at this point in time, they're projecting our savings to be roughly about $65,000. It is not going to extend the length of that current bond payment, so those bonds would still all be paid off in 2028. What it will do is it's going to take those coupons that are currently being, currently we would be paying 4% on that, and bring them down to a lesser interest rate. So that's all it's doing. It's refinancing those so that we're paying less on them. They're asking that we kind of go out and do it now. They will write the board motion for us Monday night to allow them to move forward with this. And what it does then, it allows them to keep a flow on the market. And when those market looks like those rates are low, they're going to sell those bonds. So they can do that within 60 days. So the earliest they could do it is in May, but they can keep that window open to say, it looks like things might happen a little bit closer to the end of May. We don't have to come back to a board motion. So they're kind of asking to set it up now, giving them the ability to sell it when those rates are the lowest and we can make the most amount of interest. $65,000 will be over the next till 2028 and just be less bond payments we will be making. All of the fees to do this is all rolled into that, and so that $65,000 savings is net of all of those fees. So we won't be paying anything for those fees as well. They're all rolled in. So the question is the board interested in refinancing that last little segment? I think it's almost $4 million that we did not refinance of those 2018 bonds when we did them a couple months ago.
Sure, that's on an annual savings, correct? That's over the lifetime.
That's over the lifetime, correct.
10 grand a year, you.
Yep. Board's wishes?
I'm okay with that.
Yep.
So in 3 years, we'll pay for that dishwasher.
What do you say?
So, Mrs. DeRoche, I had asked if the committee supports this topic going to the full board. Full board, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the next thing for me to discuss tonight is Arbiter Pay. So Arbiter is the company that we use in order to pay all of our officials. So PIAA gets the officials to come to your games, and then we used to pay them directly, but a few years ago, actually it's probably been a good 7-8 years ago, we went with Arbiter, because Arbiter then pays them. We put up a lump. We also don't have to issue 1099 forms to them, so Arbiter handles all of that. They charge us a $3 per person for transaction fee every time that happens. And Brian, they reached out to Mr. Geist and said, would you be interested in doing a per year fee? So it's a flat fee that we would pay once a year, and that fee is at a savings. So currently, right now, the district savings, I think, was gonna be somewhere around $700 for this school year. So although we've already paid those $3 fees from the start of the year already, they're willing to say that your fee this year is $969, but we're gonna, if you put $800 into that already, we're gonna take that off of that. And then you're just gonna owe the remainder, and then you won't pay the fees going forward. So, Mr. Geist is recommending that we move on to this, to do the 5-year plan. Moving forward every year, they priced it out, and he said it is a savings that we can see anywhere between $300 to $800 a year savings in that, so.
So if they decide to pay the officials more, we're still,
No, we pay, this is only the transaction fee. So that $3 transaction fee that we pay every time they pay somebody. Donna comes and does a game for me, I'm gonna pay you $50, but I'm paying $53 because I have to pay a $3 transaction fee. I no longer pay that $3 transaction fee.
Just so everybody understands, arbiter is like writing checks.
Yep.
So you do a basketball game, Donna, you used to get a check or you used to pay cash.
Yep.
Arbiter is a system that pays you, but because we're transacting through arbiter, they charge us $3 for every check we issue.
Correct.
So you add up all those $3 transaction fees, is gonna be less than the yearly thing.
Right.
how do they make, oh, they just make less money overall, or they get to put the money in their account and make more money?
Well, if they're charging us the fee that we pay, like the $3 fee, that's where they're earning their money, is that $3 fee. So now they're saying, we're not gonna charge you $3, we're gonna give you a break and give you even a better deal.
Right.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. Saves money.
Transaction fees, gotta love them.
Yeah, great.
So I'm sensing that you're okay with this going on the Monday night agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what if we would add sports? Let's, theoretically, we add a sport.
I would assume since
Uh,
we're locked into a
'cause it's a
5-year
year.
agreement.
It's a year.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I would assume since we're in that 5-year agreement
Right.
and we signed this, because it is spelled out what we pay each year over the
Okay.
next 5 years.
All right.
Yep. You want to add a sport?
Hey, girls wrestling is coming. You better get ready.
Is esports part of that?
No, not that I know of at this point in time,
It's the
no.
'1 sport in the country right now.
Esports?
Gaining.
Oh,
Girls wrestling.
girls wrestling.
Yeah, number
Very
one.
interesting.
Wow.
So 3 boys and 2 girls can all wrestle together?
Correct. Oh, they'd have to be separated.
All right, so the last thing I have, actually that would be move for board motion is Gorman and Associates. Their contract is up this year. When they finished the 2022 audit, that ended our 3-year agreement with them. I did receive paperwork for them to do our audits through 2023, 2024, and 2025. I am recommending that we continue with Gorman. They do a phenomenal job for us. Their increase is somewhere around 6% total, or 6% a year over the next 3 years. But there's also a lot more regulations that have been put on them recently, so that's the cost of our audits is going up.
What is that fee?
This year we paid $21,250, and next year it's going to 22 and change. Where do I have that letter? I just have it here.
So they went up $700?
About 1,100, I think it was. Hold on, let me get it for you here, Robin. It was 21,250. It's going to 23,375.
3.
Yeah. So it's like a 10% in year 1, and then it's a 4.5 in year 2 and year 3. So overall, it'll be like a 6% overall over the 3 years. Again, they had new regulations. GASB 87 came out this past year, and that is all of our leases, so all of our copier leases and all of our computer leases and everything. They had to do a whole new schedule for leases this year. Next year, they're doing IT type leasing and platforms. So GASB 96 is added starting for the 22-23 school year. So any kind of programs that we do that are instructional program leases over a period of time with a value of X number of dollars, they now have to do a whole nother schedule for those, kind of like your leases. So they constantly have more GASB regulations that they have to do, which increases the cost of their auditing for us. So.
We've been happy with the results and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Anybody have any questions on Gorman?
We've had a good relationship and we work well with them, and we have not been dissatisfied with anything they've done, so why should we not continue?
Thank you.
Okay, there will be an item on Monday night's agenda.
All right, and the last thing I have really quickly, if you read my notes, Portnoy had a ransom mail attack. They are a delinquent tax collector. They had that approximately about 3 weeks ago. They were able to get it all under control and froze all of the accounts and everything that had happened. The only problem is basically because they didn't have any access to the computer softwares, they haven't been issuing us our money. We've been back, they got back online last Friday. They are going to be having our checks processed this week, so we will return and get the money at that point in time. They should start depositing it back into our bank accounts. They did end up saying that it was none, as far as they know, it was none of our financial, meaning taxpayers' financial information that was compromised. But if it was, as they continue on, they will send out the required notices that they would be required to send if that is the case. But as of right now, they have not determined that any of the financial information held by them of taxpayers was compromised at this point in time. So they are back and functioning, so they were kind of offline for almost 2 weeks. And as of last Friday, they returned all the phone calls to the people who had called and questioning about their delinquent taxes and stuff. They couldn't do that until the system was up and running again to just basically tell people. So so that's just informational purposes to let you know that that's what issues with Portnoy we're having recently. Any questions on that?
So no board action required.
No board action. That was just informational. You got it.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss during finance? Hearing none, finance is closed. On to the next one.
Thank you.
We will transition to Education Committee.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg.
I see we have a lot of information on state testing, and we'll let Dr. Stoker get all set up here.
And this one's the one that I just talked about. So this is the one that'll be done in 2028, and that's still going to stay there. That will be done in 2028.
Committee meeting comes to order here. Dr. Stoker, I think if we announce that we're going to put solar panels in the classrooms, we might get more people to come to the education side, which is really the reason we should be here anyway. So go ahead, Dr. Stoker.
Thank you. So this evening we have several agenda items. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible just with respect to everybody's time. The first item that we have on there is a 21-22 participation rate. On January 10th, we received notification from the state that we did not meet the mandated 95% participation threshold for the state testing for 21-22. From what we understand from the IU, there are more than 600, 700 LEAs out of 700 and some that did not meet that threshold. That's because coming off the pandemic, we had students that were just not testing, and that continued into this past school year. So we had to write a plan to increase our participation. That plan included looking at what the root causes were for all of our buildings, and the buildings included Slatington, the middle school, and the high school. Did not include Peters because Peters does not have state testing. So we looked at root causes. We conducted an analysis, and then we had to create a timeline for implementation to improve our percentage participation. So we submitted that. It was due by January 30th. We submitted that before that due date, and so we will be implementing those strategies as we move into the spring for this year's testing.
I have a question.
Yes.
How does, how do students not take a test? I mean, don't we just line them up, say, go in the room and take the test? Or I guess, what am I missing here? It just seems like it should be so simple, and yet we can't get, I don't know.
Sure, so to respond to that.
You don't want to take it, so you just go home today, and that's okay?
Sure, so to respond to that, the state only acknowledges religious exemptions, but that still penalizes us. So we do have some families who come in and go through the process. The process includes about 2 weeks prior to the test, coming in, examining the test. They can't share any information out with anyone that they review that test material. But if they have a religious exemption for any of the material in that test, they can opt their children out. Sometimes we have extended medical absences. In one particular case, we had a student who was from another country that went back home. We have situations where students have anxiety over taking the test, so their parents will opt them out, things of that nature.
And we pay the penalty for that by having to go through all that written stuff that we have to do.
Correct. So we are stressing as much as possible for students to take that test. I will add that anything under that 95% threshold, so let's say there's 85% of our students that take the test, whatever that differential is between that and the 95% threshold, those students who, even if they score proficient or advanced, are then found to not score advanced or proficient. So it does count against us in multiple ways.
What was our number of participation?
So we had to look at the overall, and we had to look at subcategories too. So at Slatington, our all-student group was 94.4. The white students were 94.1. The middle school in ELA, all students were 92.4. Economically disadvantaged, 91.3. White, 90.5. Math and Algebra 1, all students were 92.4. Economically disadvantaged, 91.3. White, 90.5. Science, all students 91.3, economically disadvantaged 86%, special education 90.5, and white 90.5. At the high school, in literature, special education was 90.5, algebra 1, economically disadvantaged was 92.1, and special education was 82.6. So some were relatively close and some were a little further away. Sure.
I hear you, I don't get it, I'm sorry, I just don't understand some of that stuff. It's like, take the damn test, you know, okay, I'll show you.
There's only a certain time frame, right, that you do that testing?
Correct. There are windows for the state that we can take each of the assessments.
Okay. You're not doing that.
Yeah, tomorrow we're doing the test, come to school, take the
Yes,
darn test.
exactly.
So, like, okay, I understand. Not your fault.
Okay, our next one on here is the monitoring visit. We were, it's not an announced monitoring, it's an unannounced monitoring. We received an unannounced monitor for the biology keystones at the high school on January 10th. The monitor from PDE was here for about an hour and a half, observed administration of the assessment, questioned 2 teachers that proctored the assessment, and the school assessment coordinator, asked to see documents relating to the test. Also, as part of that, they look at our college and career evidence, which is a new requirement. So the monitor who was here selected 6 PA secure ID numbers, asked us to show her the required amount of artifacts that we need to have for college and career readiness for those students. And then the district assessment coordinator, who's myself, and our high school principal, Mr. Rashevsky, were also present. I really want to take an opportunity here to just highlight what a great job our 2 teachers did, and also Raquel Hoffert, who is our school assessment coordinator, who is incredibly just detail-oriented in keeping her binder together and really made that process go so smoothly. The outcome from that visit were that we were meeting expectations. We did receive a follow-up letter later that documented compliance and that we had a clean audit. So very excited to have gone through that process and be done with it for a couple years.
Dr. Stoker, what's the highest rating you can receive?
That is the highest, yep. It seems very marginal, but that's the highest we can actually receive.
Who were the 2 teachers?
It was Mr. Dieter and Mrs. Kunkel.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, our next one is just some information. We had 22-23 winter keystones. So we had 53 keystones that we administered in literature, 97 in Algebra 1 and 4 in biology. I apologize that I can't add numbers together with a math degree, but it should be 154, not 111. So that's how many keystone exams that we administered. Our 22-23 WIDA access for ELS and alternate access for ELS testing is also currently underway. The testing window for that is January 5th through February 17th. As of February 1st, we had 143 overall assessments that have happened. I have listed how many in listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So there are 4 areas which each of our students needs to be assessed. And that's how many that we've accomplished so far overall. Our students continue to grow. That program continues to grow. There is a cutoff point. I believe it was January 16th this year. If any student came after that or enrolled after that, they did not need to be tested. But even up to that point, any student who was new to the district and qualified for ELDP had to be assessed. So we are still in the process. I'd just like to acknowledge Dr. Gonzalez, Mrs. Matiola, and Mrs. Martin. Those are our 3 ELDP or ESL teachers who are doing a phenomenal job testing all of those students K through 12. If that testing is not enough, we also have WIDA access for ELS field test happening in Pennsylvania this year. That happens about every 10 years. So that testing window is February 14th to April 17th. That actually overlaps with the WIDA assessment window. So any of the students who are taking the alternate access for ELS testing must also take the field test. So they're going to get hit with 2 of the same kind of tests, but that's just to field test questions moving forward, so that we can, so that they can update and continue to get some research on that assessment. So a lot of testing going on currently. The next thing is comprehensive guidance plan. We have our comprehensive guidance plan that's been created. Again, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Stroll, all of our school counselors. We have Allison Crucial, who is here from the high school this evening as well. Allison serves as our department lead for this department as well. So we've created the 339 plan. So once our comprehensive plan is done, the following year, our 339 plan or comprehensive guidance plan is due. That is due March 31st of this year. We've been working on that for the past few months. It was recently discussed at the Advisory Council meeting on January 16th. That meeting includes stakeholders from inside the district and outside the district. It includes parents, it includes students, it includes business owners, community reps, post-secondary reps, several people that are in the room, right, Mrs. Snyder? So thank you again to all of the people who participate on that committee. We will be posting that publicly this week until the March board meeting. That's not required, but it's something that we do for transparency. And then we would be looking to put that on the board meeting in March. Again, not required, but something we're looking to do to have the board approve that and then submit that to PDE by March 31st. We do have the plan up there. If you can click on that, Mr. Link. It's quite a substantial sized document. It includes a lot of detail about all of the college and career readiness activities that happen. A lot of what our school counselors do. I'm not sure how many people had a chance to review it prior to the meeting, but we'll take questions if anyone has questions on that right now.
A lot of info.
I got tired of page 42.
I just wanted to make a comment about, I think that the future readiness class is really going to be a wonderful thing, but I really think that speaking to other students who are attending that class, that it really needs to be something that helps them to engage better with it, because a lot of them are kind of being like, it's boring, they're not getting what they really need to get out of it. I don't know if it's the teaching style or what it is, but maybe administration could kind of go in and like assess it and see how maybe it could be a little bit more effective for the kids.
Okay, we appreciate that
the
feedback.
kiosk is, like a lot of kids are not, they have no idea what it is. So, just so you know.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. And we are looking to incorporate the kiosk more into classes as well.
Yeah, I think that's great if we do.
So not hearing any questions on the plan, again, that will be posted from now through the board meeting in March. So if you do have any feedback, you're welcome. We'll get that up probably sometime this week. And then you can email me if you do have anything that you'd like to, any edits or anything like that, any feedback on that plan. The next up is our 23-24 middle school curriculum guide. We have the curriculum guide there, and we also have the revision overview. So I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, good evening. Under Mr. Pine's leadership in revising all of our curriculum and getting things codified, we took this year as an opportunity to really do a deep dive into the curriculum guide and do a comprehensive revision of everything that was in there. So teachers were sent this out and able to make, they were directed to make complete revisions if they needed to based on what's actually happening in classrooms. We found that some of the course descriptions were pretty out of date compared to where we're going with curriculum through the writing process that we've been doing. So throughout this, you'll see a lot of additions on here in green. Some of it you'll see is simple rephrasing, personnel matters, tidying up some grammar, making things a little bit more clear. Others, Mr. Link, if you would scroll down just a little bit more, please. You'll see, like for the essential skills, we deleted some things and just modified some language. So if you would peruse that, if there are any questions, I would take them, but you'll see every course description got some type of edit to it, some more comprehensive than others.
And that's on the website as well?
Yeah, this.
It's attached to this agenda. Yeah, you can access it through the agenda.
Once approved, then it'll
On-
be up on
on
the middle
Monday
school
night.
website.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Next up is also our high school program of study, so I'll hand that off to Mr. Rashevsky. Again, same thing, program of study is there with revision overview.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker. One of the things I wanted to see happen is that what's in print will be in practice. And I have to say it's been a team effort, and my number one leader on the team is Allison Crucial. She's in the room tonight. We do have kind of a little sheet here to help guide you through the changes that we had. I would like to point out, I know Future Ready just came up, page 30, Future Ready skills course description has been updated. So we're definitely taking a good hard look at all components in that as well. But Allison, did you want to highlight any of these changes in particular that were, I know we have. I think the one thing we wanted to talk about was the academic side. You and I talked about that earlier today. That's something at the LCTI on page 18 in the academic center information. That's
We
something.
did add the academic center back into the program of studies so that we're hoping that you will take another look at possibly offering that to our students moving forward. So we did put it in so that if that is taken, if we, you do look at it again and that is something we want to move forward with, if you decide to move forward with, that it's already there. We don't have to do another revision, so then we can simply just start moving forward with how that process is going to look for all of our students.
Yes. I'd like to highlight one thing too. Previously, our Principles of Technology 1 course did not count toward a technology credit toward graduation. We've changed that, so we're expanding opportunities for our students to dive into more STEAM-oriented classes.
Thank you, Mr. Stroll. The other thing I'd like to point out, in previous meetings that we've had on the Education Committee, we talked about the math progression and some of the things that we were looking to do. So this Program of Studies handbook would pull that all together. That's on page, I believe, 14. You can see the math progression in page 15 as well. And dual enrollment updates. We have Moravian no longer offering dual enrollment, but we certainly have our partnerships alive and well with LTRIC.
I can highlight the math progression.
Oh, please do.
So there was potential for a schedule shift. That was in, and right now it's been pushed to look at it next year. But what the math department decided was they wanted to go back to their original offerings with algebra. So incoming ninth graders will have a full year of math again if they are in that applied type track. If they are in an academic track, they will just have academic algebra 1. But then our incoming sophomores will now go back to a full year again of math. So they have concepts this year, and it used to be concepts 1A, now we will have 1A, 1B. So that is highlighted up there. And our academic algebra students will have, they have 1A right now in 9th grade, next year in 10th grade they will have 1B. So that is the big change from what was previously done last year. Any questions on that?
What would be the highest progression of math following that plan? So you
Yeah,
have your
so that's
freshman
always
year,
something, yeah.
your freshman year is algebra 1A, your sophomore year is 1B, then we go to geometry.
Correct, so
So
the
then we got
highest is
trig.
trig, prop stat.
So we never have a chance to
Right, so
go
that is
pre-calc or
always,
calc.
It's a good question, and that is always something that we openly discuss when we are talking about this, because we have an obligation to our students to put them into a procession to potentially have calculus. Because we all know that what a ninth grader thinks they want to do and what a senior is actually going to do is usually a big change. So, yes, our more applied students won't necessarily be on track.
Right.
With block scheduling, I will say that it allows our academic track students to double up as sophomores. And then that puts them into progression to have calculus as a senior.
But in a traditional schedule.
Under a
not.
traditional schedule, that is something that's going to have to seriously be looked at and revamped if that's the direction we would go.
Hey, Mr.
Yes.
Kerr, if we could flip to page 17, you could see the offerings that you would culminate to. With the AP Calculus, Ultra C Calculus, and Analytics. So that's outlined on page 17 of the guide. Anything else for the high school course curriculum guide?
I have a question. Going back to the academic center.
Yes.
Is that going to be on the agenda soon?
That would be part of the budget approval process.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking that is, if we need to have a motion to put that back into our curriculum or our student eligibility, we're in a process, I'm even at the vocational school now to start taking students. Will they have time to be able to make that choice if we wait too much longer? That's my concern.
So if this is approved, it's going to be an option for them, but ultimately the board has to approve the dollars.
I understand that.
The dollars that are associated with the cost of the students going there. Right now, administration is recommending that we budget for up to $100,000 into the new budget to allow students to be able to participate in a full-day academic center. And that's administration's recommendation.
But my point still is, if we don't make some really decision-making decisions, it's going to be too late for the students to be able to apply for that part of it. So that's my concern.
Yeah, mine too. So I really did want to discuss that because it's a March 15th hard deadline. But I really think that if that is not going to be, that decision isn't going to be made by then, I really think we're going to have a conversation with LCTI and see if they would potentially push that and open that up to our students if there would be a change.
So I'm not going to speak for LCTI, obviously, because they have no representatives from here. But I speak to them frequently about this topic. And they know that we want our Northern Lehigh students to be able to participate. And I will actually be meeting them with their director again on Thursday, next Thursday. So just know that they know what our wish is, but ultimately I can't greenlight it until I know that there's money in the budget for it.
Are these voting documents that we have to vote on?
Yes, so this.
So if we don't vote on this one, then
So
That
this,
should give us an idea, right?
with the board, if you are okay with this, it would go to a vote for Monday night to include it in the program of study, so it would be an option for students, but again, we would have to have the money to back that.
But like I said, my concern is timing, not so much for the budget, which the budget included in, but for the timing for the students to make that decision.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to be off another year.
Can we just approve the funding for that ahead of time? So I'm saying, this is what we'd like to see for next year?
That's a significant number to approve separate from the rest of the budget. I would, highly encourage the board that if they approve this as, if they approve the high school course of study, and this is included in it, they need to be highly cognizant of that when they vote on the budget.
You're committing yourself at that point.
Right.
Allison, do you have any idea of approximate how many students, obviously we know how many are currently at LCTI, but how many may take that option? I'm not gonna hold you to it, I promise.
Well, that would, I'm sorry,
Please don't.
that would also include new students that we don't even have at the vocational school yet.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
there is a
that's
big,
potential.
There's
that's a big
potential there.
potential, yeah.
A school our size, typically maybe 15, 10, it depends.
I think
And-
schools similar to us are coming in at 10.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we expected for our pilot year. We're kind of calling next year, if the board decides to move forward with it, that we would have probably up to about 10 students.
And there are things you can look at, some schools maybe don't send freshmen, just because it's, for just the independent component of LCTI, and so there's things you can look at.
How many years have we not participated in that?
Too many.
Too many.
At least.
I'm
At
not
least 10.
disagreeing with that.
At least 10 or
I would
so.
say I've been here, it's my 14th year. And
My son was
I think
involved
that
in the
it was
original
first
one.
2 years that we allowed it, and then after
Right.
that, so it's probably been at
We-
least
yeah.
10 or 11, at
Greg's
least.
31, so yeah, he's been out 14 years, so yeah.
Yeah.
But he was the original when it's just started.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do we know,
And-
sorry, go ahead.
I don't understand.
Do we know what the cost would be for a student to go?
It's double.
Right.
It's double. In other words, what we pay for half a day student, we would pay for a full day student.
Right.
It's like 10,000 a student is what, if I'm hearing 10,000 for 10, or 100,000 for 10 students.
Right, approximately, yes.
Approximately, and that's what we were budgeting for. So should I discuss the 5-year kind of rolling average?
The calculation is based on 5-year rolling average of participation of each sending school district. We do not have an average because we haven't participated.
Right.
So I've convinced them, the other districts, I had to convince 8 other districts to allow us to begin without actually kind of identifying what that average is, and then they're going to recalculate it 3 months into the new school district, come back and tell us that's going to be our first data point towards our 5-year rolling average. It benefits all the other districts to allow our students to participate because it actually lowers their overall cost. But I had to get them we had to get them to agree to allow our students to be able to participate right off the bat without any, right now we have a credit of I think like $1,200 from like 10 years ago.
Right.
They all agreed to let our students be able to participate from day one if the board approves it. Even though we don't necessarily have our money in the budget like they do
Sure.
consistently.
Are we the only Lehigh County school?
That's correct. We are the only one.
Okay.
I asked the board if you want to learn more about this, page 19 and page 18 and 19 of this guide for the program of studies. And this sheet can certainly zero you in if you forget those highlights. But I certainly have to commend Alice, since she was fantastic in bouncing ideas, and myself, Mr. Stroll, and working with teachers of the high school. So it really did come together well. We're very proud of this product.
I have a question that's separate from that.
Sure.
You said Moravian won't allow the dual enrollment?
It's a transition. Some schools, just change their business ideas. We do work closely with Moravian with other things, but in terms of L-Tri-C, a dual enrollment, L-Tri-C still on board, and so that's alive and well. But Moravian, I guess, out of the business of doing dual enrollment.
Did we have a lot of kids that went there?
That I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I know we're doing like our college and career visit. We're going to Moravian, I think, in about a week. So it's one of those things they're still close to us, but they're just not doing the dual enrollment going forward.
Thank you.
And we have other schools that we participate with
Yes.
dual enrollment as well, like Pitt.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Lehigh and DeSales.
Yep.
Moravian went away from a scholars program last year. Because I just think it was a big task for them. So what they are currently offering is kind of what we do with the University of Pittsburgh, with Joe Tout with the honor psychology, with bringing in adjuncts to teach dual enrollment classes to our students. That is not something that I've really explored yet, but that's the direction Moravian went after last year.
Thank you.
Is that a shift because they went from maybe the college to the university thought process change?
It's quite possible. It's quite possible. So, but Lehigh University and DeSales still does their scholars program, the highly competitive, application process, and usually at least one of our students gets accepted to each of those programs each year. So,
I don't know if Penn State offer that out, might be offering something.
they do dual enrollment, the
Yeah,
same
okay.
concept. They don't offer the scholars program.
Yeah.
However, we do have a number of students that participate in the Emerging Health Occupations Program, which is a partnership with district, LCTI, and then either L-Tri-C or Penn State, Lehigh Valley. We've had more than a handful of students go through that program. So does the committee support the program of study going to Monday evening? Okay.
And I think we have to do the same, I don't know if we did it for middle school curriculum guide as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we did that. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hauser is back up again with the middle school master schedule. We're looking to, moving into the 23-24 school year, we're looking to make some adjustments in the middle school schedule.
So again, thank you for the time tonight. I'll do my best to keep this brief. So everyone knows this presentation has gone through public review twice before. I have brought this up several times, about 4 times at my coffee and conversation events at the middle school for our families, and it has also been through curriculum council here within the district. I have tried to make these slides as self-explanatory as possible so that we can look at them at our own pace and they don't require presentation all the time, but I'll guide us through some of this. This is the culmination of about 18 months' work between myself, faculty, parents, and students. We knew that our schedule needed to change to reach the goals that we wanted to have for the middle school. And the schedule process evolved throughout the course of the last 18 months as the district did other work. Curriculum revision, comprehensive planning, guidance planning, et cetera. We also looked internally to what data trends are we seeing with our students coming up over the last number of years. What are the realities emerging in post-pandemic education, and how do we best respond to those? So the philosophy we took in writing the schedule was not simply let's organize time into neat little chunks. It was let's organize time to drive the mission and goals of what the school needs to accomplish. So every minute of every day on this schedule is specifically designed to fit a particular purpose and not just fit neatly into a box, okay? So you have some basis for change there. I did put in a little bit about our Bulldogs Inspire program. This started as a positive behavior support program last school year. It's evolved into a framework for a lot of what we do at the middle school, including our academic vision with essential skills. So I did put a little bit of that on here because you will see some time designated to this program into the schedule, which touches other goals that we have. Continuing, please, Mr. Link. So this green and the red here is a very basic overview of what is currently happening versus what we are proposing. So some of the major changes, we're looking at increasing the length of classes. We have a hybrid schedule proposed that would have class length increase to 51 minutes on certain days and 75 minutes on other days, and that will vary based on the day of the cycle. We have put a lot of thought into completely revising the concept of flex period, in some cases eliminating flex period, which is a glorified study hall. We do our best to fit a lot in there, but when it comes down to it, it's a glorified study hall. So we revised that into 3 unique periods that we are calling Goal Team, Inspire, and Brilliant Pathways. So that works with our overall framework and vision for the school, but also with one of our more successful partners, College Career for Every Student, or CFES. We're also building in dedicated time for remediation and for enrichment, so that we are hitting students on both ends of the spectrum, advancing those students that need the advancement and helping those students who need the extra support, and also recognizing and building in opportunities that maybe we have kids who are that a student might be weaker in math but stronger in ELA, and therefore can be in both remediation and enrichment simultaneously, depending on needs. Next slide, Mr. Link, please. This is an overview of what the schedule will look like. The top part and all the white blocks are just basic housekeeping blocks, reporting time, homeroom, etc. The colored periods on here are all of our different classes. So you'll see the schedule is divided into two unique sections. We are going with days 1, 2, and 3 being traditional period days. Students will have 6 classes plus a goal team in there. Goal team is designed for kids to use IXL. It's designed to have time with a specific mentor. It's only 30 minutes. They're updating their information for us. We're gathering that information and using it to plan later instruction, but we're also having a teacher specifically assigned to them to help them out as they might need assistance in academics. These classes are all 51 minutes apiece. Teachers would teach 5 out of 6 periods, with the exception of specials teachers, which would teach 4 out of 6 periods, and then they would have a period that is as assigned by administration for different responsibilities. The reason there is that change is because we have 4 marking periods with two specials in every marking period for the kids. So we need to have specials divisible by 4, and you can't have them teaching the 5th period. Okay, so we have to work that out. Presently, all teachers teach 4 periods. On days 4 and 5, we're increasing the length of periods to 75 minutes. Part of this is due to meeting the realities of changing standards. For example, the next generation science standards are very intense and very rigorous. More time is going to be needed for the depth of thought that has to go into those activities. I also feel as the principal of the building that it would be healthy to shake things up a little bit for my faculty and create new lessons, new ways of doing things for all of our students, just to improve our overall teaching and outcomes. And we've also added in there where it says goal team instruction, that is where remediation and enrichment will occur. The Inspire period and the Brilliant Pathways period, this is where we are doing work with our essential skills and also our career education with the CFES program. So I know that's a lot to digest, and I give everyone the kind of overall scope of that. If we can continue, and I'll take any questions at the end. Next slide, Mr. Link. So what these slides are kind of what I've explained for those unique periods that are put in here, and I have the time commitment on those, and I've also connected all of those to specific data points existing in the district, whether they be things from our comprehensive plan or things we are actually seeing in our numbers. Mr. Link, could you scroll to the next one, please? And it's the same thing, continued. Next, we have the Inspire, and then a follow-up for the Inspire. I've also put in here some things that this year we are doing an Inspire period, kind of as a pilot. Mrs. Jones has taken the lead on that as our facilitator of the Inspire program, and I put in there some data that we are seeing. So for example, when I wrote this presentation, which was about maybe a month ago or so, we have seen a more than 50% drop in the number of suspensions compared to last year, and a almost 2/3 drop in office referrals since we've implemented the program at the start of the year when compared to last year. So, I mean, we're really reaping the benefits of that program, and it's thriving. Next slide, please, Mr. Link. And this is our goal for Brilliant Pathways. Again, this being more of our college and career readiness platform. From CFES, they come up with a 10-point plan for students to expose them to different pathways. In middle school, we're kind of taking them from elementary to the high school, the bridge at both ends, and we want them ready for any decision that they want to make with their families at the end of 8th grade. Are they looking more for technical education, an academic avenue, And are they setting lofty goals for themselves even at a young age? And that's what we want to see our kids do. Next slide, Mr. Link. And you can see again a follow-up. And next slide, please, Mr. Link. All right, so on these slides, what I've done is I've tried to outline what exactly all these different shifts mean for time. So you'll see on here where we increase the overall length of classes, but then we do have that days 4 and 5 where only 3 of the 6 classes are needed. So I've tried to highlight here what exactly this will look like. So presently we have in every core subject 144 hours of instruction per year. When you do the initial math, it looks like a reduction down to 136. However, with the specially designed instruction that we have for kids in those remediation enrichment periods, when we add that time in, we're actually gaining hours overall. So if you look at the impact of Goal Team and how we restructured that from flex period and then added in remediation enrichment, we are adding 19 hours for ELA, adding 19 hours for math, adding 19 hours for general classroom support, and we're adding 72 hours in areas where kids need it. So right now, they get 144 in areas whether they need it or not. This schedule says, pull that back just a little bit, and then restructure the flex period, spread that out, and give the remainder in areas where they need it. Next slide, please, Mr. Link. This is everything in a nutshell. You'll see all the numbers calculated here. I want to put at the end, where I have in yellow, the yearly instructional total. By restructuring our flex period and eliminating a few hallway transitions on days 4 and 5, we actually added 2.5 instructional days just based on the extra minutes we found in the school year without going beyond our regular 180. Okay?
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes. Yep. So still 180 days, but we'll get the equivalent of 182.5. At this point, I would open it up to any questions. Oh, and then, I'm sorry, curriculum impact. We would not need curriculum changes. We're going through that process with Mr. Pine already. This is a cost zero. I did put into the middle school budget a few $1,000s and some line items just in case extra resources are needed. Nothing that we wouldn't otherwise budget to the departments anyway, just being very specific that it's used for remediation and enrichment purposes. Okay. So at this time, there's class sizes. I will take any questions on the schedule.
Mr. Hauser, how many staff members are going to be teaching 4 out of 6 on a given day?
That would be 2 in computers, 1 in art, 1 in music. That's 4.
Phys ed?
And then I have health and phys ed. That would only, that would be both of them. And then Dr. Gonzalez would only be 2 because he is shared staff at the high school, and Spanish only runs in 8th grade.
Okay.
And then we also have FCS. That will be another one. And that's Mrs. Jones. So an example there, her responsibilities would be picking up that Inspire program for that other part.
Well, when you said duties will be assigned, what types of things are you looking at?
So that could be covering classes in the event that we do not have substitutes in the building. That could be providing additional support to students through mentoring time. That could be doing curriculum work as needed. So that would be a collaborative process I would work through with higher administration, with Mr. Pine, with Dr. Stoker to assign those.
And that would be something that would be occurring every day?
No. Well, it could. Mostly it's going to be occurring on days 1, 2, 3. The other days they would have their natural rotation would kind of work in there because we're only meeting 3 out of the 6 anyway. So
right.
It would happen on those days.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that it doesn't become an extra prep period.
Yeah, there's definitely more.
That we utilize our professional staff the way we should be using them time-wise, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely. And
obviously, you're instructing kids.
Correct. And there's more than enough academic work to be done that their day will be appropriately filled and all contractual obligations will be met.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
It's a unique mix, seeing this and we were talking about going from flex to non, and it's kind of a hybrid of that in a way, so I'm curious to see what the high school will do next.
I like the fact that the class sizes are going down.
Yeah, and what we're hoping to see there, I think, these numbers I got, if I ran this schedule model with this year's enrollment, with the current staffing and number of sections and things, this is what I came up with in certain, so I did the 4 core subjects, reducing them. And there are outliers, of course,
Right.
but this is what happened when we ran these numbers, okay? And that's without an increase in staff. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Next up, we have Canvas update, Mr. Pine.
Sure. So the past couple times we've been here, I've been talking a little bit about professional development because we've been really moving through a transition in that as we've now been pulling Slatington Elementary and the middle school into Canvas and using it. We're now a solid month and a half into that introductory period with anyone beyond that initial cohort, so I figured I'd sort of tell a story with numbers here. So if you remember from the last time I did this in November where I pulled numbers, there was a bit of an issue because of the way that PowerSchool pulls classes in, getting an accurate number in any one place. So that's why you're seeing this in a table form rather than me just pulling a graphic right out of Canvas. And I'll sort of explain again what each of these columns is. So I pulled, this is 1 week. So I pulled the last week of September and then I pulled the last week of January. I figured the last week of January gave us a solid month of usage in Slatington in the middle school. We were already seeing usage because we did have a good number of early adopters, but this would be actually, okay, now we've got everyone in there. We've got everyone knowing how to do at least a few of the basics, which is what the rest of the professional development this spring will also cover. So if I'll start with, I'm going to start with the high school actually, because even it took me a second to register these numbers and figure out what exactly they mean, because obviously what I want to see from September to January is an increase, right? Like we want to see an increase. I'm not making excuses for that, but I'm going to tell you the way I'm looking at this now and the way I'm going to keep an eye on that is we started at the end of September with 72,000 page views and 1,933 interactions, right? So page views are passive. They click on, they read something, they see a video, whatever the case is. And interaction is the student has to do something on that page. They have to submit something. They have to participate in a discussion. Actually, a lot of the stuff I have down there at the bottom would qualify as interactions, assignments, discussion boards, and things like that. So we started with 72,975 and then 1,933 participations, which for the average student per week was a total of 154 already. And so then as we move through January, it actually drops, right? It's 64,677 and then 1,106 interactions. But that's still 135 times per week on average that students are interacting with the Canvas platform. So as I thought about this and tried to figure out what are these numbers telling me? Because I know our teachers are using it. I know it because Ms. Dunham's working with them. She's been working with them all first semester in order to meet all those individual needs. I think the story here actually is we already had a lot of energy and usage at the beginning of the year. And so I think that actually this metric is going to wear itself out. I think at some point we would expect this to level out. We don't want the kids on Canvas 7,000 times a week. You know what I mean? Eventually there's a leveling out here where it becomes more about, well, how are we using it? You know, what is that usage actually looking like? So that's why I sort of pull in at the bottom of this graphic the images here, which are directly from Canvas in terms of like what's actually happening in there. And that's where you'll see the high school. I mean, even though those usages, we're going to take a look at the middle school and Slatington Elementary have gone up. I mean, the high school, we're seeing 1,220 discussion topics. So we're seeing that within Canvas, there's a lot of student interaction being used. 6,148 assignments. So again, when we're talking about interactions rather than just going on and clicking onto a page, we're seeing a lot happening with the students on there. So that's why I actually pulled that in here, because you can take a look at it and you can kind of see a couple of the types of things that happen in Canvas and how often those have happened. That's not 1 week. That's since the beginning of the year when we're talking about 6,148 assignments. So if you could actually pull back out, Ms. Fung. So when we look at the middle school in the Slatington, though, we're expecting to see growth at this point, because even though we may have had early adopters, we still had a lot of people who needed the professional development and training. So you'll see here at the middle school, we started with 9,913 page views and 4 participations, 4 times at the end of September. In that week, 4 times had a student done anything in Canvas outside of just clicking into it. But that was a 41 average per student week in some way being on Canvas, right? Whether it was interactive or not. Here we don't necessarily see the page views increase as much, but we do see that the participation interactions have gone up, I don't know, like 1,000%, right? Like, I mean, it's over 10 times as many. So we're seeing a lot more participation interactions, and overall, we are seeing the average up at 50 average, doing something in Canvases per week for the students. And in Slatington Elementary School, where we started off probably the slowest at the beginning of the year with 4,149 page views and 19 participations or interactions in that last week of September, which is about 8 per week average. We're now up to 14,892 in the last week of January, and 193 participations, interactions, and a 1,000% increase since the beginning. And again, that means that students at Slatington Elementary School between grades 3 and 6 are 30 times on average per week, taking that week as a snapshot, in some way interacting with the Canvas environment. So I just want to provide that for you now, because I figure we are at least enough into this second phase to kind of take a snapshot, and let's see what's actually happening and what's changed since the beginning of the year. So I mean, I guess those are the numbers. So I mean, any questions?
Yeah. So what does file uploaded mean? Does that mean there was an assignment that they had to do something and put it in the system?
So assignments, strictly speaking, are assignments. File uploads are essentially that teachers or students are uploading files into the Canvas system to be shared out. So it could be a PDF. I mean, it could be all kinds of files. Basically, what that would indicate to us is how much are we beginning to use Canvas as our warehouse for content. I mean, if I look at that particular metric, that's what I'm seeing, is that, we're looking at right now, the investment of teacher content and student content is 12,944 files. And at some point, as that continues to increase, those files increase, I think if I'm looking at it as a measure, it's measuring how much have we bought in? How much of our people bought into the point where, like, now this is becoming a primary resource for them in terms of where they're putting content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what they're uploading.
All kinds of things, though. Yeah, I mean, it could be video files, even though there is a media recordings thing built into Canvas, but they also have the ability to upload those. I can find out if I can disaggregate what kinds of files those are, but it's just a lot of different types of files, I would imagine. So,
Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Nope.
I was just curious, what do the teachers really think about it? Like, are they happy? Are they genuinely happy? Are they just saying, well, we don't want to hurt Mr. Pine's feelings?
Yeah. So
I want the real data.
Sure. So that's actually our next phase, and Ms. Cusack, you had brought that up last meeting, and we have a survey crafted right now that we're looking to push out next week. It's a very simple, short survey, and that's basically what we're looking to get at the heart of. How easy do you find this to use? How satisfied are you with it? And then we have a couple of open-ended questions there where rather than coming up with 50 questions to try to get a sense of what all of that means, we want them to just respond to us and say, like, hey, here's what I'm still struggling with, or here's what I still want to know more about.
Now, the survey, is it anonymous, or is it?
So, it's funny. I mean, I don't know that we even talked about which way to set that. I mean, I guess we could set it anonymous. The only downside to that would be that we do have questions in there that are, do you want us to follow up with you in order to help you with that problem and things like that. Let me see, I could rephrase those if we're more comfortable with it being anonymous, just to make sure that people don't feel like they have to say something. Yeah. I think you might get more truthful answers. Sure. And give them the option if they want to. Yeah, type that in. If you're comfortable sharing,
to reach out.
Yeah, no, it's a really good idea. Yeah, so I mean, we can certainly change those in order to be anonymous, because we're looking to put them out to teachers, and we're actually looking to put one out to students too. Obviously, the students, I mean, the difficulty is some of them might not be as motivated to respond, but I mean, we're hoping that those who are motivated to respond will give us good information.
And the only other concern I have is, I mean, these numbers are great. Everyone likes numbers, but not everyone learns that way. We keep clicks and uploads and all this stuff, and sometimes we kind of lose track of the root of actual teaching without that.
I think I'm gonna add on to that.
Sure.
Okay, and not to cut you off, but I have two things. Number one, this is what the district has gone to. We've made that decision. I understand that nobody likes change. Nobody likes to be that person that's the change agent, and the person who has to change isn't gonna like what they do. All right? So I'm not too concerned about that. What I am concerned about is how do we take those people that are going to rebuff it to get them on board? Because this is the direction we're going. Plain end of story, we already committed a lot of money to this. Number two, so I understand we need to get their feedback, but the feedback should be addressed, in my opinion, on how can we make this more appeasable to you. What aren't you getting? What aren't you understanding? Because we're not the only district that's flying by this, right? We're one of thousands.
Sure.
And we're way behind in that curve. Number two, I'll bet you 90% of our board members have no idea what you're talking about with interactions. I do, because I've seen it. What I'm going to ask you to do, and if it's possible, to bring a staff member or two, just to open up their Canvas platform and show the board what is actually happening. Chad, you're thinking this is teaching kids. It's not. It's a tool for instruction. And it's an add-on to many things that are hopefully, that are going on in the classroom. This is just a way of teachers getting feedback from students in some cases of where they are content-wise so they can address it in the classroom. Well, that's what we want to do, obviously. Or it's a way of delivering instruction at home so that the teacher can do something with the material when they're in the classroom themselves. And it's a whole blending and flipping it. It's called flipping the classroom, where the professional's in the room doing the homework with the kids instead of mom and dad being at the kitchen table going, I have no idea how to do this. So that's a whole philosophical change. But Canvas will allow that to happen. So I'm going to ask you if we could get a couple of teachers to volunteer, take 20 minutes out of a board meeting or even a committee meeting and show the board what is actually going on. What does that interaction mean?
Sure.
I know what it means, but
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things. One, I think the problem of laggards, right, which is any innovation, typically like that last stage is laggards,
Yeah.
I think that's going to be overstated here. I don't think that that's actually going to be as big of a problem. Even people who have been a little bit slow to adapt and adjust are really starting to get it now.
So what's the expectation right now? Let's talk high school, because I already know, because believe me, I have granddaughters there and they report everything to me. We have teachers that are not using Canvas. They're not changing for whatever reasons they want to use. What is our expectations with staff in that regard?
So by now, all individuals at the high school should be using it in some way to implement assignments, quizzes, and just put basic content on there.
Okay.
Those were the three sort of benchmarks that we set of things that should be happening as we worked through those phases in the fall. That's what should be happening.
Okay.
Yes. So what I will say is what I think is working for us right now is I do think that it's that our model is heavily supported. I think that this is a heavily supported transition.
I'm happy to hear
for
that.
us.
It's a lot of work. I get it. It's a lot of change.
Yeah, no. But I mean, I think that the board's decision to have tech integration specialists, to have those things in place has really made it so that teachers are getting the support they need when they need it in a way that a regular professional development model couldn't. So I think that that's probably very helpful. To answer the question about like just good instruction, right? Like, so I will say, like, we talked about it a little bit. Like after we went through the whole first semester, there were opportunities we probably could have talked about good instruction earlier in the design talks. Like we were talking about how to just build things and make things and stuff in Canvas. But I will say so we've learned from that, And we are blending those a lot more as we work through Slatington in the middle school, making sure that they understand, like, this is why this is good, this is how to use this is a little bit more of that. And with the high school, we're actually circling back around. So our last professional development session with the high school, a good portion of it was actually about things like basic direct instruction. If you want to use what is called a direct instruction model, it's a teaching thing. It's a way that you design instruction. Here's how to use Canvas in that way. For like what we call constructivists, which is more of like, the group work, like coming up and building ideas and making meaning and stuff. Here's how to use Canvas and kind of structure things in there. So we are really getting to that now of making sure that it's not a gimmick. This is really going to be tied in structurally to the way that learning happens. So I'm very aware of that because that's a huge concern of mine. Anyone comes to me with some sort of new app or new toy and things like that, my first question is, what does it do to make learning happen? I know that's a simple way to put it, but that's what I care about. I care about making learning happen.
I think these numbers are very encouraging because we just started, to be quite honest with you. I think we're off to a really good start. Do we have any teachers that are utilizing Canvas that students can communicate with students? Let's say I'm doing a group project with somebody that they're communicating with, obviously the instructors involved, but you have peer editing going on. I don't know if there's anything with that type of situation, or they're utilizing Canvas to communicate with each other without teacher facilitating.
Sure. So I'd have to dig a little deeper to answer that in an intelligible way, right?
Okay.
Like a really thoughtful
That's how
way.
you know that it's working.
But I know in terms of discussion boards, the answer is yes. They're
Okay.
using discussion boards. I think that when it gets down to when it gets down to like, there are other powerful things in there that I think like there's the ability for students to be separated into groups and create wikis together, so they create their own pages and stuff. I think that people are talking about that. I think that it's just a matter
I know
of
we're at stage one, I get that. I
Yeah.
was just curious to see how, because we're gonna have some high flyers that are really gonna go after it, and I was just curious about that. But I think for the board's benefit, if we could just have some examples, teachers come in and explain what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing.
Sure. I mean, to be honest, I have the ability to like go in and impersonate any teacher too. So I mean, like
Sure.
even if I see something,
I'd like to
I
see
can bring
their
in some things
enthusiasm
too.
of what they're
Yeah,
doing.
absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Because their ownership. I don't know, just food for thought.
Yes, and I will make them anonymous.
And I'll shut up now.
Other
Okay, Matt.
questions, thoughts? I promise I'll talk about something other than Canvas next month.
No, it's all good. Thank you.
Okay, last item on the agenda is online enrollment. So we are in the process of investigating transitioning Northerly High School District's enrollment to an online system. So a few years ago, we took it over in the district office. It was in each of the buildings, and we just did not think that that was the best approach for any new people coming into the district. Parents could have potentially had to go to 4 different buildings. Now we're at the point where we have it as a district enrollment, but now we're looking again to make it more user-friendly. And also, my secretary is also the registrar, and at this point, it's taking quite a lot of her time to go through enrollments. She schedules probably an hour for a small family and over an hour for a larger family. We actually met with another school district that has been doing online enrollment for some time and has it very regimented, very streamlined, a standardized process that we really like, and we think that we can adopt here in the district where we can get it down to less than probably 15 minutes per family. We get a lot of those documents would be collected up front. It would necessitate filling out those documents and filling in all of those fields where sometimes they come, they have the paperwork and they didn't fill out half of it. Things of that nature. So those conversations would still happen at the enrollment process, but we would have a lot of that data and a lot of information up front, which would also help us to schedule those more appropriately, but also any needs coming into the district we would already know. We would know if a student had an IEP, we would know if a student that maybe needed to be screened for ELDP services, things of that nature. So last week, the registrar, Mrs. Erkinger, and I went out to that school district, actually watched their process, talked with them, asked a lot of questions to figure out how this may look in our district. Then we had a meeting with Power School. That would be our current SIS that we use. Mr. Hill, myself, and Tina also met with them, 2 representatives from their company for Enrollment Express, which would be the enrollment part, and then the eCollect, which would also house those documents as electronic files. This Thursday, we have a follow-up meeting with Mr. Link, Mr. Hill, myself, and Mrs. Erkinger to talk further about what that may look like and get some more information. So currently, we have projected costs. We try to get a quote for tonight, but they really go through the IU and check our enrollment through what is actually going through the system, not necessarily what our projected enrollment is for next year. So we're still working through some of those things, but expected year 1 because of setup costs would be $21,392.50. On the call that we had the other day, he did say to us that there would be a $3,000 credit in that respect, and that we could actually have it up to 6 months earlier, because we are looking to pilot this in the spring. There's a 10-week setup for it. By the time we get them, what we currently use is our enrollment documents. They upload them to the system, get everything ready for us, and then we start to push students through the system so that we're ready for the kind of high, need time in the summer. So we want to get this started as soon as possible. So potentially it would be that cost minus $3,000. Year 2 it would go down because the setup fees would not be included, so it'd be about $8,900 in year 2, about $8,900 in year 3. Those years would be able to be taken out of the curriculum and instruction budget, so essentially my budget. And year 1 we're looking at the potential of using some ESSER funds for that year 1, because again this would be a hands-free online process, so we can use some of that money for that. Any questions on that?
I'll just share that Northern Lehigh is behind this. The more and more is that it's easier for the parents to be able to upload their documents at home, fill out all the questions, fill out all their kind of Connect Ed type information, their Power School information. So really when they're coming on site, what was traditionally an hour can probably be done in about 15 minutes. It's a valuable, powerful tool.
I have a question about that. Is this just for like all your kindergarten enrollments, or is this for like the whole school district?
This would be for the entire school district. We're looking at a transition period, so for this coming school year, obviously we would not put kindergarten into this. So kindergarten would be phased in eventually, but not upfront.
And would you still be allowing like grandparents and stuff to be able to do it the traditional way? Because, a lot of them are not electronic savvy and might not even have the resources at home to upload and do all that stuff. Like, would they be given an alternative option?
So in speaking with the other district, we asked those types of questions. We said, how often do you run into people who just say, I don't have devices? So they actually use their public library and suggested we do something similar, or they have devices that are available in like their lobby to fill out, things, or they do provide assistance if somebody needs it. But they said they really don't run into that. Maybe in year 1 they did, but after that they really have not had that issue. I will add that it also translates our documents for us too, so if there's a family that's registering and needs to, see the documents in Spanish, things of that nature, they're able to communicate through another language as well, which we're seeing more students obviously coming into the district with, that are newcomers. Did you want to add anything?
I don't think so.
Any questions for education?
So then I would just ask if, I don't have the exact numbers, but we are working on getting that quote. If the board would accept to move that to the board agenda for Monday night for a vote.
Yeah, sorry, one more. I had written some things down here when Mr. Green was going on about the state testing. So not to rewind too much, but going back to the whole 95% thing, you made the comment about, why aren't people taking tests, all this stuff. Honestly, I think it's one of those unintended consequences of COVID. I think a lot of parents are realizing that their kids don't excel at standardized testing. And that doesn't make them any less of a student, they just learn different. So I think it's just one of those things where people are realizing they have different options, different exemptions, different rights, and I can't think it kind of falls in that category.
If only we could get the state of Pennsylvania to understand that too, that's the problem.
Listen, I don't.
We play by the rules.
Exactly,
We have to
that's
play
my
by the
problem.
rules.
I
Spend
understand,
How
I'm
many
just-
days and how many hours chasing answers to some of their questions?
And the instruction time that is being lost as a result of it.
To me, that's ludicrous, but I've said my piece and I'll be quiet.
I understand.
So Dr. Stoker, do you need,
Yeah, can we just revisit, can we move that, the online registration system to, from the board, do we have permission to move that to Monday night for a vote?
yes.
Thank you.
Looks good. Anything else for Education Committee? All right, we're gonna slide right in there, Gail, the policy.
Sorry, I see the agenda being 3 pages long for policy, so I will turn it over to Dr. Stoker.
I will do my best to make it brief. All right, so this evening.
Oh, you're done already?
Any questions? No. So we have 3 policies on the agenda for this evening. We tried to group these again thematically, so they pretty much relate to one another. So some of the changes that are made to one are made to multiple. So the first one is threat assessment. This policy is one that's recommended for legal liability purposes. So we have to have information regarding threat assessment. We have to make sure people are trained. We have to make sure there's annual notice, things of that nature. So that's kind of what's in that paragraph, is just the requirements under threat assessment. Mrs. Dada is one of the leads with regard to threat assessment. Within the policy, Mr. Link, if you can bring the policy.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sure. Ready? I was trying to log it in. Threat assessment?
Yep. Please. I think it's on page 3 maybe where it's green. I don't know why it's covering up like that. We'll have to fix that. So that section in green right there just says essentially that we will provide mandatory training to school staff in the identification, recognition of student behavior that may indicate a threat to safety of the student, other students, school employees, other individuals, school facilities, or the community in accordance with the law. So that's the annual training requirement that has been added to that. A little bit above that, I'm sorry, we missed one. Right there, just one word. We have to annually notify students and families that we have a threat assessment team and program. I think that's it. So it's really just that training and notification. Any questions on that policy? Hearing none, do we have the ability to move that for first reading to the board on Monday night?
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. The next policy is policy 805. This is emergency preparedness and response. Act 55 of 2022 changed a lot of what we do in education with regard to safety trainings. So if you look at the agenda, there's a chart that's there. There are new requirements that were established are listed. Essentially, we have to give 2 hours of training annually in one of the or more of the following areas: situational awareness, trauma-informed approaches, behavioral health awareness, suicide and bullying awareness, substance use awareness. Those trainings can be conducted either online or in person. And then the other side of that chart, we have to offer 1 hour of training annually, and it has to be in person for emergency training drills, including fire, natural disaster, active shooter, hostage situation, bomb threats. And then below that, again, it talks about that threat assessment and identification of recognition of student behaviors that may cause a threat. So those are all the new trainings that we have to do. Many of them are through Act 55. Some of them were already out there and they just kind of got narrowed down a little bit more and more specifics regarding those trainings. The policy really just follows suit. So everything that's kind of in that description is in here. It's just that chart has been put in here in like a paragraph form to talk about what trainings we have to have, who has to be trained, and then it also relates back to the Safe to Say Something program, so that if anybody does recognize that there are issues, we still have the Safe to Say Something where it can be reported.
Is that every year? The 2-hour training?
Yes. So now it's every year.
Every year.
What was happening, I think, is that there were some trainings that were 4 hours every 5 years, and people were waiting until the last minute to train, and so people were not getting trained and that recognizing certain things that happen in
Does,
schools. So
does
that's
that,
annually.
does that training have to be face-to-face?
So the first column, it can be online or in person. The second column has to be face-to-face.
And that's, just to confirm for my reading, the 2 hours of training can be a combination of any of those 5 listed there for a total of 2 hours?
Yes.
And then
However, there's also some other laws that we still have to make sure we're meeting those requirements. Like for suicide awareness and prevention, it still has to be 4 hours every 5 years. So yes, but there's some other boundaries we have to make sure we stay within.
And then the one on the right, is that the 1 hour training annually in the following? Is that 1 hour per each of those topics?
Yes, so it's 1 hour for your
time scheduled for our teachers to do in-service days for that?
So that's the point we're getting to, where we have a lot of mandates that, and not enough time sometimes to do those things. So yes, it becomes a very strategic process.
We're just gonna train staff and they don't have to teach anymore.
That's right.
So policy 805 is recommended for legal liability purposes. Any questions on that? Okay, do we have the permission of the board to move that policy to a first reading for Monday night?
Yes.
Okay. And our last policy this evening is school security personnel. This policy goes back to the concept of school safety and security coordinator. So that was something that came up a few years ago, that every district had to identify a school safety and security coordinator. In our district, that's an administrator. This law actually clarified that and reiterated it because not everybody was not everybody was appointing somebody within their district. Some districts were appointing outside personnel. So they had to go back and rephrase the law essentially. So it has to be an administrator. If someone were to leave that position, whether they leave it and stay within the district or they leave the district, we have to reappoint somebody to that position within 30 days, and our superintendent has to sign off on that. We have to then go and report that to the state through PCCD and make sure that we update who that new person is. So we have a 30-day window to do that, and it has to be reported. So essentially that is in the policy. It talks about if a person vacates that position, that we have the 30 days to notify and to hire someone for that. And again, the end result, if we hire someone to be in that position, we can have an intern. We just have to report who that person is. On page 1, number 3, just talks about the training. So again, we're back to that threat assessment training that we talked about a little bit earlier. The next page, I think you're in the right spot. The school safety and security coordinator also has to receive training. So there's a training requirement for that person in that position. And I think that's all that's updated in that policy. Any questions on that? Okay, do I have permission of board members present to move that for first reading for Monday night? Okay, any questions on policy?
Well done. Thank you for making it.
Good job.
Closing that one for Christmas. Bring us home, buddy.
We're gonna open up real slow. I don't think we've been here long enough tonight. And I guess we'll turn it over to Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. This will be really more just of a statement of information. This Wednesday, we're hosting a substitute career fair here in the district. We are targeting substitute teachers, substitute kind of instructional assistants, substitute clerical, substitute custodial, and substitute food services. The one area that we're really not targeting is like skilled maintenance. We're fully staffed there. So that will be from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock Wednesday morning in this room. We're going to have different tables set up. It's informally, it's almost going to be like a speed dating. They're going to come in, they're going to meet with different administrators, they're going to share with us their resume, the different areas that they would be interested in subbing in, and then from there we'll follow up with them to start that kind of onboarding process of making sure that they have all their required information, clearances and such. We are, just as an aside to that, we now have our fully staffed with 4 permanent building substitutes, in the last school board meeting, I think we added 6 or 7 day-to-day substitutes, either a day-to-day substitute or guest teachers.
Mr. Link, is that list of substitutes expanding, or is it still pretty tight and narrow?
Well, it's actually expanded with, as of the last school board meeting, we added our 4th permanent building sub and day-to-day substitutes, and I believe 1 guest teacher. And we actually just had a 2nd guest teacher bring in his paperwork the end of last week. So this is posted, this was advertised, Times News, Blue Mountain Chronicle, Gazette I think it's called, on our website, through our social media, and I think that's it. Yep. And that's what I have.
All right, one more thing. I know we emailed back and forth about it personally. There are some people here in the crowd that might benefit from it. I know we don't traditionally include youth sports or other stuff like that, but if there's programs within the community that affect us, even though we're not, and you want to get them out, you know, send the events to us and we'll try to, you know, Mrs. Snyder, Angela, you got events going on that could really help bring the community together. Mr. Hauser, baseball, basketball, volleyball, whatever you guys are doing, dance, will help.
Yep, bring them in, we'll review them. Oftentimes what we do already for the youth athletic associations, be it Northern Lehigh Youth Baseball, NLYAA, the Recreation Authority, we will push out for them kind of like what their events are, or if there's sign-ups, because we do want to see our students involved in community events. So feel free to send them in. We typically get a handful of them a month, but we can absolutely do that. If they want to come and present something that they're doing that would directly benefit our students as well, this would be a venue to do that in. All right, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Oh.
Yeah, Heather, you're pointing to the door.
No. Gail, she's ready to run.